Chapter 4:1. The dragons finally get their break. Under the king's command, the soon-to-be enrolled students formed a line and filed into the Kamartaj library. Shafika and Shirley stood near the front. At first glance, the library was like any other in the world. Rows of tall, wooden shelves, the warm, familiar scent of old books. But as they walked deeper, the place grew stranger. Between the long stacks, the passages narrowed and the light dimmed. The shelves themselves were enchanted. Protective wards kept whole sections shrouded in shadow. The further they went, the more everyone's curiosity swelled. They had come for an opening ceremony, yet instead of a grand hall, they were being led deeper and deeper inside the mountain. From the outside, the building had looked only 10 or 20 meters deep. Now it seemed to extend forever. Some students whispered about the peach blossom spring, imagining a hidden paradise. Others half-seriously suggested that the vice principal might tap a brick like in Diagon Alley and reveal a secret way through the wall. The cautionary, expectant hush made the procession feel like a ritual, crossing a threshold into a new life. At last, they passed the final row of bookshelves and the space opened up. The library had been carved into a stone cavern inside the mountain. 3 enormous stone doors stood embedded in the rock, and between them a small wooden house with its own door. Each portal was carved with mystic runes. The king began to explain, "This is the interaction center of Kamartaj's 3 great sanctuaries, and the only way to reach the Supreme Mage Academy. You'll understand more soon." Now, starting with the first person, open the little wooden house and go inside. Shirley stepped forward without hesitation. She paused only a second before the wooden door, then pushed it open and walked in. When the doorway opened, it revealed an unfathomable darkness. Shirley vanished into it as if swallowed. A ripple of startled breath ran through the crowd. For a moment, people exchanged anxious looks. These were, after all, the applicants from Jarvis's list, the most ambitious, responsible, and righteous youth selected from around the world, so no one began to panic or accuse the Academy of foul play. Their unease faded into a wary silence. Shafika followed, heart pounding. Standing before the now closed wooden door, she took a deep breath and shut her eyes. She thought of Shirley's calmness and steeled herself. Nothing would happen. She pushed the door open and stepped through. Instead of being devoured by darkness, Shafika felt a gentle breeze and the scent of fresh flowers and foliage. The musty smell of the library fell away. Her eyelashes trembled. She opened her eyes. Bright sunlight slanted through an azure sky onto an immense forest. Above the trees, giant dragons wheeled and cried. The sound of wind through leaves, the distant roars of dragons, and the calls of strange animals, an orchestra of unfamiliar, wonderful noises, washed over her. It was a vast, vibrant world, and she fell in love with it at first sight. She stared, dazed, drinking in every detail. One by one, the other students followed through the door. Each of them went silent the moment they crossed the threshold, stunned by the sight that unfolded like a scene from a myth. The old king was among the last to enter. He closed the wooden door behind him and allowed a small smile. When Leon had first opened this pocket realm, it had been a barren place. Now the small world brimmed with life, and the king had helped shape that transformation. Seeing so many awestruck faces, he suddenly understood the thrill Leon had mentioned earlier. Ahem! Wake up, everyone. This is where the academy is located. You'll have plenty of chances to see it more closely. Now, about the opening ceremony. He put thumb and forefinger to his lips and whistled. Far above, the circling dragons banked and descended in an instant. They hovered over the gathering, folded their enormous wings, and settled to the ground with a muffled thunder. The sight drew a chorus of exclamations. Everyone, mount the dragons' backs. The king made a small hand seal and waved. A gust of enchanted wind lifted the students and settled them onto dragon saddles. There were hundreds of dragons in the small world, so each student had the chance to become for a while a dragon rider, 1 person per dragon. To the Academy Plaza, the king commanded. The dragons beat their wings as one and ascended. Their wing strokes churned the air and dust. As they flew over the forest, their ranks momentarily blotted the sun. The students whooped and laughed. How could they not? They were flying to school on the backs of dragons before classes even began. Their imaginations ran wild with what the academy might have in store. They crossed a central lake, and then the true wonder revealed itself. In the distance floated an island like an inverted mountain range. Perched atop it was the academy. The students went silent again, jaw-dropping at the sight. It was more magnificent than anyone had dared hope. The dragons set them down on the plaza of the floating island. For a few moments, everyone simply stood there, still dazed. "Rooney, take your people to rest. You won't need to train for a while," the king said, patting the head of the lead dragon. At the sound of that, Rooney, one of the veteran dragons, shed what looked like tears of joy. The other dragons turned to the king with huge, wide eyes. After confirming he was serious, they too broke into noisy, jubilant cries. They leaned their massive heads against one another like old friends embracing and beat gentle, winged pats as if patting each other on the back. They had been through so much. Who could understand the terror of a clone dragon hatchling opening its eyes to a green, grinning face? And the announcement felt like the lifting of a long burden. One by one, they soared into the air with loud, exultant howls, as if finally breaking free from a cage. Watching them, the students' excitement turned to a shared, moving relief. Shirley stepped closer to the king and asked softly, "Uncle King, why are they crying? They looked so sad. What's happened?" "They're not sad," the king answered with a smile. "They're crying because they're happy. One day you'll understand why." He waved to the assembled students. "Now, everyone, follow me to the central mage tower for the opening ceremony." Chapter 402, Tony, you'd better hold the Ancient One in your arms during combat class. The river running through the floating island split it cleanly in two. On one side rose Gothic and palatial Western buildings. On the other, red-walled, vermilion-tiled Eastern structures with high enclosing walls and broad courtyards. In the very center of the water stood a mage tower that pierced the clouds. If one looked closely, a faint golden light could be seen bathing its exterior, mysterious runes drifting within that shimmer, Vishanti wards. Under Dr. Strange's care, that protection had even withstood Infinite Ultron's universe-shattering assaults. In the spacious hall on the tower's first floor, Leon and the 9 other instructors sat on a dais carved from white marble. A long table covered in dark brown cotton felt embroidered with Kamartaj sigils stretched before them. The ceiling shifted between enchanted outdoor vistas and arcane diagrams. Beside the table sat Thor, who had rushed over from Asgard earlier. He laughed heartily and gave Loki an affectionate, thudding pat on the back, assuring everyone there was no problem appointing Loki as a teacher. After all, he was the 9 realms' foremost mage. Loki bore the attention with an awkward, strained smile, every fiber of him wanting to conjure a dagger and bury it in the golden-haired god's flank, if only his powers weren't sealed. On Loki's other side, Mordo sat motionless, his face unreadable. In his hands he cradled a portrait, a painting of a bald woman in yellow robes, held the way one might hold a memorial portrait at a funeral. Tony slapped his forehead and muttered, "I don't even know how to describe this. We have 2 aliens in strange outfits and a gloomy guy holding what looks like a funeral portrait. When the students walk in, are they going to think we're hosting a Halloween party?" Mordo bristled. "That's not a memorial portrait. That's a portrait of the Sorcerer Ancient One. It even has," he paused, searching for the right word, "her own thoughts." The image in the painting spoke in a gentle, amused voice. "Mordo, actually, this is my portrait," the Ancient One said, smiling. "Mr. Stark is right. Put me down, or you'll frighten the new students." Ancient One sounded a little exasperated. Initially, she had been helpless because of Leon's whimsical plan to hang her portrait at the entrance so she could tell newcomers the Wi-Fi password. Leon had grandly called it Kamartaj's welcome board. Now she was resigned because Mordo insisted on carrying her portrait wherever they went, stubborn as ever. True to form, Mordo protested, "Ancient One, the students will be honored to meet the sorcerer who defended Earth for so long. It would be a pity if you were absent." "Oh my God, you're going to have to hold this bald lady in your arms during combat class too," Tony said, spreading his hands in mock helplessness. Mordo opened his mouth to argue further, but Leon raised a hand to stop him. "The new students are here," he announced. "Since the Ancient One does not object, Mordo may carry her if he wishes." The portrait of the Ancient One simply stood with her hands folded behind her back, smiling quietly at Leon. Her gaze was clear, as limpid as water. Few people could meet it without feeling disarmed. Leon returned the look with a calm, equally clear smile. Voices rose from outside the hall as the new students gathered. Wong's voice, amplified by magic, rang through the chamber. This is the Mage Tower. Faculty meetings, dining, simulated combat, and stargazing classes take place here. Please remain quiet. The principal and the teachers are waiting. The heavy enchanted doors swung open, and Wong led 345 new students into the hall. They varied in height, build, eye color, and temperament, but fell silent as they took in their surroundings. The painted sky on the dome matching the sunset outside, animated portraits moving along the walls. The students murmured in wonder rather than turning the room into chaos. Perhaps the screening had done its job. The Supreme Mage Academy served Kamartaj and had standards. It couldn't simply accept anyone. Leon stood. His robe was black, markedly different from the brown robes the other teachers wore. "Welcome to the Supreme Mage Academy," he said. "As principal, I am delighted you accepted our invitation and chose the academy. This academy is affiliated with Kamartaj. For many of you, this will be your first time here, and this is the academy's first year admitting new students. You will spend the next 4 or perhaps 6 years here. Believe me, it will be a crucial and wonderful time. You should have seen the course listings in your admission notice. Sorcerer Wong will explain more shortly. But a word of caution when selecting your major. Your choices now will decide whether you belong to the Academy of Magic or the Academy of Mystical Arts. Each year, the 2 academies hold combat competitions. Winners earn substantial points. The principal's scholarship goes to the student with the most points. And if any of you joined the Academy of Magic just to meet Superman," Leon added with a small smile, "you may find me after dinner." He sat back down, and with a casual flick of his wrist, several long tables materialized before the students. Chairs slid into place as if by magic, guided to each student, and foods tailored to each person's tastes appeared silently on the tabletops. A ripple of astonished gasps ran through the hall, not least because Leon had opened his robe and revealed the emblem on his chest. Only then did the new students put together who their principal really was. Superman, his familiar, handsome face, had appeared before some of them before. Oddly, the memory had a way of slipping away. Today, with Leon unmasked, everyone clearly remembered. Among them, Shafika was the most excited. She nearly sprang to her feet. Dinner loosened tongues and spirits. Conversations grew animated as people compared unusual abilities and strange pasts. Shafika overheard someone speculating about nightmares, the same nightmares from the wizarding stories, saying you had to have witnessed death to see them. Another student said he'd earlier seen a saddle floating by itself to collect him, which had alarmed his family. Shafika's mind flashed. If seeing nightmares meant she'd witnessed death, she had seen Superman kill 2 terrorists back then. If he hadn't intervened, things might have turned out very badly. The thought made her hurry through her meal even faster. She couldn't wait to find the principal and thank him. Chapter 403. Unreliable People. Wong had planned the entire opening ceremony down to the minute. In his original schedule, the cordial exchanges between teachers and students were supposed to happen after dinner. He hadn't counted on how unreliable some of the mentors would be, or how unreliable some of their family members could be. The new students were still eating when Thor, laughing loudly, hauled Loki along and blended in among them. Perhaps in Asgard, this counted as getting close to the people. He brazenly snatched an orange juice from a 10-year-old, gulped it down, then crushed the cup with a satisfied grin. Pointing at the stunned child, he declared the juice pleasant but a little delicate, saying that at such an occasion one should be drinking fine wine. He slapped Loki, who was rolling his eyes, on the chest and announced, "This is my brother Loki, the 9 realms' foremost mage. He'll teach shadow and illusion magic. Trust me, take his class. He won't disappoint." Then, lowering his voice and cupping his hand over his mouth so everyone could still hear, Thor added loudly, "Actually, I think Loki's skills would even suit a vice principal." Wang, who was sitting at the teacher's table, felt his face heat. He pressed his palms to the table and rose, ready to remind Thor that this was Kamar Taj and that as a guest he should behave. Before he could speak, Tony stood up first. Tony, sporting a fake mustache and the badges Professor of Applied Weaponry and Acting Principal, dramatically vaulted over the long table as if showing off. The new students gasped as they recognized him. It seems everyone knows Iron Man. Tony spread his arms, savoring the recognition. He jabbed a finger at Thor. Calm down, kids. You can get autographs after dinner. Better not let that Point Break guy over there think he's anywhere near as popular on Earth as Iron Man. The students fell silent and turned to stare at Thor. Thor narrowed his eyes. I am the Thunder God Thor, son of Odin, king of Asgard. Once they know my name, no one will want an Iron Man. He raised Mjolnir. Lightning patterns danced across the ceiling like a projection. Who wants an autograph? I'll sign as Thor and Loki. If you want Odin's, I can sign that too. The students' mouths formed perfect O's. If this man wasn't putting them on, he really was the Thor of legend. What sort of school was this Supreme Mage Academy, if it included gods? Wait, Tony suddenly said. I've changed my mind. Everyone can ask me for an autograph right now, on one condition. He grinned. If you get my autograph, you can't go bug that Point Break guy afterward. Thor laughed and tapped Tony with Mjolnir. As long as I sign before Iron Man, you can come find me anytime. 3 for me. Tony held up 2 fingers and then shifted to 3, 4, 5. Their back and forth descended into childish one-upmanship. The new students, clutching sheets of paper and pens they'd just produced, looked bewildered. Every professor at the long table clapped a hand over his face. Banner and Wang reddened with mortification. Lilia, Jennifer, and naive Diana couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and embarrassment. Mordo, always rigid and stern, suddenly bristled. He stood up, took the portrait of the Ancient One from the side of the table, and strode forward. Holding the painting aloft, he announced loudly to the students, Look, this is the Ancient One, the great mage of Kamartaj. If you want an autograph, come here. Don't mind those 2 show-offs. The room went quiet for a beat. The Ancient One in the frame, always composed, must have had her metaphysical eyebrows do a little raise. Asking a painting for an autograph was a bit much. But the stunt worked. The trio of unreliable mentors had livened the opening ceremony. Luckily, the new students behaved. They stayed in their seats, simply stretching out arms and papers. Leon rang the little bell on the teacher's table. All right, if you want autographs, go ahead. It's a fine chance for the professors to introduce themselves. He shot Wang a look and murmured, Don't kid yourself, Wang. With Tony and Thor here, you won't be running an orderly Hogwarts tonight. Leon gave him a knowing smile. Why not join them? Start with introductions. Reluctantly, Wang stood and introduced himself. One by one, the professors followed. Applause rolled through the hall until the last, Professor Daniel, finished. The new students pushed back their chairs and stood. Tony and Thor looked at each other, sparks ready to fly over signatures, when nearly every student surged forward, paper and pens raised like a tide. But they didn't crowd Tony or Thor. They swarmed Leon's table, shoving papers at him, shouting, It's really Superman. My principal is Superman, and he's so close. Principal, please sign. Sign my face. If I win the principal's scholarship, can I exchange it for something else? Leon found himself surrounded. The opening ceremony had devolved into a signing session. Okay, don't push. Everyone will get one. He accepted a paper, wrote Superman in the language of the student who'd handed it over, and handed it back. The kids queued like an orderly line. Tony and Thor, who'd been competing a moment ago, now stood ignored. Tony glanced at Thor. See? Iron Man's not the top dog on Earth. Thor regarded it as obvious. That's respect for strength. Mage Leon is popular even in Asgard. Tony wagged a finger. Only in Asgard. On Earth, I'm more popular than you. It's just because Midgardians don't know me. If they did, they'd prefer Thor to Iron Man, Thor declared confidently. Tony crossed his arms. He was about to retort when a different thought crossed his face. His tone changed. Unless you join the Avengers, then there's a chance. The Avengers? Thor's curiosity was immediate. Stellar. Meanwhile, Shafika, who had been waiting eagerly, finally reached the front of the line to see Superman. She handed over her paper and pen with trembling hands. Before she could introduce herself, she realized Superman was already signing, in Pashto, her native Afghan tongue. He even asked the familiar questions. Shafika, right? How's your family now? No more trouble from bad men, I hope? Shafika froze as if her mind had crashed. Superman remembered her. In her imagination, he should be thinking only about the world's safety, constantly busy saving people. Compared to the whole world, she felt insignificant. And yet, he remembered her. A jolt of excitement ran through her. She could hardly contain her joy. No, no, they're fine, she blurted. She nodded so hard her curly hair bounced, her small face lit with happiness. Superman handed the notebook back. Superman, neatly written across the page, and gently ruffled her curls. Keep it up. Study the mystic arts diligently. One day, you'll be able to protect your hometown yourself. Shafika's eyes sparkled like stars. Even after she walked away from the long table of teachers and returned to her dining table, she remained in a daze. It took someone sitting beside her to bring her back to the present. She realized she had forgotten to thank Superman properly. Oh no, she pouted, tapping her forehead. How could I forget the most important thing? She glanced back at the mentor's table. There was still a long line in front of Superman. Looks like I can't do it now, she thought. If she wanted to thank him face to face again, she'd have to win the principal's scholarship, right? Superman's words, study hard, kept replaying in her head. She clenched her small fists. The desire to be the best student and earn the scholarship slowly took root. Superman's autograph session lasted more than 10 minutes. He found a personal message for every new student. Once students had their autographs, they began checking out the other mentors. Besides Superman, Iron Man, and Thor, everyone was curious about the other teachers of magic. The orientation ceremony dragged on for over 2 hours. Finally, Mordo led the new students out of the Sorcerer Tower to assign dormitories. After a few weeks of classes and selecting majors, the Academy would split students into 2 branches, Mystic Arts and Magic, and reassign dorms and teaching spaces. The Mystic Arts facilities were naturally in the area with Eastern architecture. The Magic branch was in the Western quarter. As the ceremony ended, the students followed Mordo, who carried a portrait of the Ancient One. At Superman's request, the portrait introduced itself in a helpless voice. Everyone can also use the Academy Wi-Fi. The password is... and then trailed off. With that, the mentors began to disperse. Except for Tony, who loved improvising, the others had to return to their offices to prepare lessons. They were supposed to have finished preparations during enrollment, but Tony had led them astray, and they'd all gotten sucked into discussing the 3-body problem instead. The night before the ceremony, Hamir and Lilia realized they still had lessons to prepare. When they asked Tony what to do, he shrugged and spread his hands. Prepare lessons? Prepare what lessons? Do you mean lessons on using hot weapons? Only then did everyone remember Stark Industries' history as one of the world's largest arms manufacturers. Tony could casually talk about firearms and weapons. He was in a different league. The other teachers could only rush back to their offices and prepare lessons overnight. As the mentors drifted away, Loki finally found an opening to stab Thor in the lower back with a small knife. Clang! The dining knife in Loki's hand snapped in 2. Thor was unhurt. What are you doing, Loki? By Odin, you've ruined my clothes and splattered cream on them with that knife, Thor exclaimed. Loki disdainfully tossed the broken knife aside. When he'd been cast down to Earth and lost his divine powers, he hadn't brought his Uru blade with him. Otherwise, Thor might have bled. I've had enough of you, Loki said, spitting the words. You loud, reckless oaf. How long are you going to mope around Earth? Why don't you go back to cursed Asgard and sit on your disgusting throne? Why so angry all of a sudden? Thor wiped his face, bewildered. Are you unhappy on Earth? Don't worry, I'll get them to look after you. I'm going to be an Avenger soon. Loki raised an eyebrow. An Avenger? You're joining the Avengers? Of course, Thor said, proud and innocent. They're the most popular people on Earth. Thor wrapped an arm around his brother's neck and winked. Once all the Earthlings worship me, I'll make sure they treat you better. Loki rolled his eyes. He'd lost count of how many times he'd done that since arriving on Earth. His idiot of a brother had been charmed into oblivion by Earthlings in less than a day. Impossible, Loki said flatly. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'll make every Earthling despise you. You can't make me the least bit unpopular, Thor protested. Loki jabbed a finger in Thor's chest. On Earth, the most adored people are superhero actors. And I, Loki, god of mischief, son of Odin, I am the most talented, the most excellent, and the most charming actor. Loki grinned. I rewrote Thor. You saw Thor 1, right? It starred me. I changed the script so the exiled Thor becomes the exiled god of mischief, and the ending has the god of mischief reclaim his power and save Asgard. The odd plot had made Loki wildly popular. Now, whenever he appeared in public, a dozen fans swarmed him for photos. Sometimes, impatient or amused, he'd glare and tell them to kneel. A few did, even kissing his boots in excitement. The adoration, as uncomfortable as some of it felt, gave Loki a rare sense of accomplishment he'd never had in Asgard. He had fallen in love with acting and with Earth. With the script for Thor 2 entirely in his hands, Loki planned to portray Thor as a lecherous fool who'd once streaked through the Council of Gods. He intended to make Thor utterly contemptible. Loki could already picture people spitting at Thor as he walked down the street. The thought made him smile. Chapter 4 of 5, Loki's Thor. Meanwhile, Thor was completely baffled. Are you talking about plays or something? They actually let you act in a play? He scratched his head, failing to catch the meaning behind Loki's grand proclamations. He almost reached out to touch Loki's forehead, wondering if his brother had finally lost his mind. Is something wrong with your life, Loki? Maybe I should sell some Uru to Kamartaj so I can give you some Earth money and make things easier. Thor patted Loki's shoulder like a doting older sibling, trying to share what he thought were comforting tidings. You don't have to worry about Asgard. Father still sleeps, but Mother is doing well, he went on, eager to reassure him. And with the Bifrost up, the frost giant uprising hasn't spread through the 9 realms. Loki listened and nodded faintly. Of all the news, his mother's condition was the only thing that truly mattered. If you're planning to sell Uru, why not give it to me? Like for my daggers, he said. Daggers? Ha! I actually brought some. Thor grinned and produced 2 daggers from his belt. Here, I knew you'd want them, so I brought them this time. Loki took the blades, staring at the familiar cold gleam. He murmured a thank you as his fingers closed around the hilts. Then, with a sudden, lethal motion, he plunged both daggers into Thor's side. The wet sound of steel into flesh carried just enough to make the few people still in the hall turn and stare. Thor stood frozen, eyes locked on his brother's sinister smile. Loki! Thor bellowed. Loki drew the daggers free, flicked the blood from the blades with practiced ease, gave a triumphant sneer, and headed for the door with an elegant run. As he moved, he pulled out a comm device and dialed. He amplified his voice on purpose. Kingo, he said into the line. Yes, it's me. You're playing Thor again. I accepted your offer. This time, Thor has to do an Indian dance, naked. Hey, Loki, don't run, Thor roared, clutching his side. He limped after him, trying several times to swing Mjolnir and strike Loki down, but in the end he held back. Damn Loki, he gritted. Next time I see him, I'll teach him a lesson. Tony, who had been watching the scene unfold with amusement, strolled out of the mage tower. Ever ready with a barb, he said. They're both brothers, both adopted younger brothers, but why do Loki and Leon turn out so differently? He smacked Thor on the back. Maybe the problem lies with the older brother. Time for some self-reflection, Thor. Thor blinked at him. Leon is your brother? Adopted? That's right. Didn't I tell you? Tony replied, all nonchalance. Thor looked from Tony to Leon and then to the dragonborn figure of Loki disappearing into the sky. A sliver of doubt crept into him. Could it really be his fault? He found himself reflecting in a way he never had before. Nearby, Leon let out a soft chuckle. Tony was unreliable, but he could put on a convincing front when he wanted to. Leon, however, was worried about something else entirely, the Kingo Loki had called. Kingo was an Eternal with an Indian appearance. Long ago, 10 Eternals had arrived on Earth under orders from the Celestials. After dealing with nearly all of the deviants that posed a threat to humanity, they scattered across the world. Kingo loved the spotlight, so he went to Bollywood and became a movie star, so convincing that for a century he played 3 generations on screen. Lately, he'd tried to break into Hollywood. When Loki cast about for an actor to lampoon Thor while still capturing his divine charisma, Kingo was the perfect match. He'd played Thor in Thor 1 and, true to form, brought a heavy curry flavor to the role, yet somehow it worked. Hearing Kingo's name nudged Leon's thoughts toward the Eternals and a far darker matter, the celestial child Tiamut, still gestating at Earth's core. That thing needed a vast reservoir of energy, harvested from intelligent life, essentially a sacrifice of humanity to be born. Avoiding that fate left only a few options: ensure Earth never reaches the population needed, somehow strangle the celestial before it could mature, or move it elsewhere. Leon considered using the Space Stone to relocate the embryo, then the Reality Stone to feed it the energy it needed from some other source. But that plan had problems. Celestials and other cosmic entities weren't likely to be missing Infinity Stones, and the logistics of fooling cosmic-level beings were daunting. His thoughts drifted to a different, cruelly efficient plan: let his black light clone consume Tiamat. That way resources would be used and no ordinary lives would be lost. Only Tiamut itself would be destroyed. If the Celestials didn't need Earthlings' consent to sacrifice intelligent life, Leon reasoned he didn't need to ask the Celestials for permission either. He was a conceptual entity now, a reserve, but his authority in this universe was comparable to that of a Celestial. He could try to communicate with the embryo first, gauge its nature, and then decide. In the comics, Tiamut is a sleeping Celestial, a top-tier power capable of world-ending acts with cosmic energy. In the film Multiverse, there were countless parallel worlds, and with them many versions, embodies of Tiamut. How many of those embodies had been sacrificed? On average, roughly 0.99-meter bodies are lost per Earth. Only in a small number of universes would the Tiamut in a planet's core actually be allowed to reach birth. Chapter 406, The Self-Sacrifice of Jangtiam. A flicker of spatial distortion, and Leon found himself inside Earth's core. Molten rock surged all around. Iron and nickel from the planet's formation run together into a roiling sea. Nestled in that inferno lay the enormous celestial infant Tiamat, curled up and sleeping, his body sheathed in a solid, impenetrable armor. Nothing on Earth could harm him. All he needed was time, to wait until the day he would be born. "This guy really sleeps soundly," Leon muttered as he swam through the molten flow. The tens of thousands of degrees didn't bother him. He drew close and laid a hand on Tiamat's armored surface. The black light clone, already reconfigured into a battlesuit, peeled from Leon's arm and flowed over Tiamat like liquid, seeping into every seam beneath the armor. Leon hadn't yet decided whether to devour Tiamat outright or to help him be born early. Either way, he wanted the Celestial's genes first. The black light clone fused to the flesh beneath the armor and unleashed its devouring function. Microscopic viral tendrils began to erode the sleeping god. Even as an unborn being, Tiamut's body was as hard as rock. Through a brutal mix of infection assimilation and devour absorption, the clone labored until it finally tore away a piece of flesh. Celestials were not purely biological. They were bound up with cosmic energies, embodiments of certain universal mechanisms. The clone recoiled. After returning to the Marvel Universe from the DC Universe, it had devoured the genes of the Sea of Blood and the main body. Its genetic multiplier had reached 1,120 times. Even so, devouring celestial flesh was overwhelming. Leon felt the shock run through him. "Good thing I devoured the genes of 10 Eternals earlier," he thought. "Those will help." The eternal genes within the black light clone suddenly linked. Healing, mind control, matter manipulation, super strength, powers surged, and golden, mysterious runes blossomed across the clone's surface, interlacing like a phantom robe. Those runes were a contingency the Celestials had embedded in the 10 Eternals, a fail-safe that could share power with Tiamut during the emergence and help them survive if Earth was destroyed. By absorbing fragments of those 10 Eternals, the black light clone triggered that contingency and synchronized with the celestial tissue inside it. The overwhelming sensation vanished. The flesh it had taken suddenly felt like its own. The devouring instinct moved freely now, as if consuming genes that belonged to the clone from the start. The genetic multiplier climbed: 1,120, 1,200, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, 81. In minutes, the black light clone had fully digested Tiamut's flesh. Its genes refined into the perfect level. This became Leon's second clone to achieve perfect genes. Then emptiness hit. A tenfold rise in genetic level should mean a tenfold rise in strength, but the clone's energy had not increased proportionally. It collapsed into a weakened state, its power falling to less than a tenth of its potential. Leon intended to seal the clone inside his inner world and recharge it with the Space Stone, when a river of cosmic energy suddenly poured into the clone, saturating every depleted viral particle. Leon nodded slightly as strands of golden light linked the clone to Tiamat. The Celestial's contingency had not only allowed genetic synchronization, it had bound the clone to Tiamat. The sleeping god was now feeding energy into the very thing that had consumed his flesh. A voice reached Leon through the golden light, soft but resolute. Tiamat, perhaps awakened by Leon or simply not as deep in slumber as assumed, spoke directly into his mind. Emergence is coming. Earth will be destroyed. Devour me, stranger. Use my power to protect this planet and its people. Leon blinked. He hadn't expected the Celestial to offer himself so plainly. But Tiamat's love for Earth was genuine. In the comic stories, Tiamat cherished the planet. In the films, he had even lent his energy to the Eternals, turning himself into metal to interrupt an emergence. This was the same sentiment, Earth as a beloved child. "You're asking me to kill you?" Leon said. Tiamat's tone was simple, earnest. "Earth is beautiful. Civilization's development is precious. I have watched this world evolve for millions of years while I slept. Stranger, I sense vast energy within you. You seem to be a conceptual entity. Please, kill me. If you must, devour me and use my strength to defend this planet." Leon felt an unexpected tug at his own hardness. He wasn't usually moved by self-sacrifice. People like this tended to rattle him, but Tiamat's plea landed with weight. "Wait," Leon said. "Maybe you don't have to die for this." He stroked his chin, lava licking past without harming him. "We can try another way. Move you out of Earth, into the cosmos, and complete emergence elsewhere. Fill you with the energy you need without sacrificing Earth." Tiamat's reply was cautious, almost resigned. "Once emergence begins, it does not stop unless I am killed or sealed. You shouldn't gamble with it." "No one can say for sure unless they try," Leon countered. "Even so, getting you out of the core seems less risky than leaving you here." Tiamat hesitated. Not even Orisham the judge could change what a celestial requires for birth. "How would you know unless you try? It can't be worse than staying inside Earth's core. But if I leave, Earth's core will suffer a grave imbalance." "I can solve that," Tiamat answered simply. "Then try." "All right," Leon said. "Call me what you like." "Call me Tiamat," the Celestial replied. "Okay, Tiamat, get ready. I'm going to move you into space." Leon retracted the black light clone. From his palm, the azure glow of the Space Stone and the crimson flare of the Reality Stone flared to life, coiling outward. "By the way," he added, "my name is Leon." The energy of the Infinity Stones flowed over Tiamat's massive form. Space itself was pried open, and the rules of reality were bent. Tiamat vanished completely from the Earth's core and reappeared in the starry void outside the planet. Back in the core, molten rock churned around the empty space left by his body. Liang released the power of the world and combined it with the Reality Stone, quickly creating molten material to fill the void. Moments later, he dispersed the stone's space-fixing power. The lava continued to boil, but the place that had been occupied by Tiamat was now filled with new molten matter, indistinguishable from its surroundings. "Next is Tiamat," Liang said. He vanished from the core and reappeared beside Tiamat, outside the Earth. Having been removed from the environment that had nurtured him, Tiamat was already sliding towards slumber. If allowed to sleep in interstellar space, his life force would dissipate until death. Not far off, earthly energies began to drift toward him, subtle currents of life force and consciousness. It was an unconscious drawing, the Celestial's mechanism of self-preservation. Tiamat was passively being pulled toward premature emergence. If he didn't want all life on Earth to perish, Leong had to accelerate Tiamat's birth into conditions that would be sustainable, or else send him far away. He did not act immediately. Instead, all his clones halted their tasks and began to observe and study the human energies being drawn to the Celestial. Liang flicked his wrist and, with the power of space, brought Jarvis up from Earth to his side. He placed a hand on Jarvis's head and borrowed the Mind Stone. Inside his inner world, the Rigate Duo clone held the anti-life equation, using it to analyze the human energies as well. The components of those energies were quickly broken down. Besides bodily life force, The main components are consciousness and emotional energy, Liang said as the analysis completed. Love, hatred, pain, all can become nourishment for a celestial. An idea formed. Artificially providing emergence nourishment might be possible. He flew closer to Tiamat and through the Mind Stone apologized to Jarvis. Sorry, Jarvis. I need to borrow the Mind Stone for a while. Please bear with me. I'm fine, young master, Jarvis replied, elegant even as Liang held him. What you're about to do is important for the Earth. It is an honor. Liang smiled and stopped in front of Tiamat, placing his palm on the Celestial's cold, ice-layered armor. Tiamat, I'm going to take you farther away for your emergence. Don't resist. On Tiamat's head, the 4 cylinders that served as his sensory array were dimming, but his consciousness still spoke. Liang, it is not too late to kill me. I am grateful for your sacrifice, Liang said, but the conditions for emergence won't change, and other methods are unlikely to work. The gestation of a celestial is tied to the universe's own development. Destruction only begets new life. Only a balance maintains cosmic order. Any attempt to alter this process is an attempt to violate the universe's laws, and cannot succeed, Tiamat finished. Liang shook his head. It's easy to say impossible after failure. The Infinity Stones are precisely the things that can reverse and modify laws, Tiamat. He brought Tiamat and Jarvis into his inner world. The black light clone inside that world began to perform what Liang called a premature birth operation. With the anti-life equation and the Mind Stone, Liang had already analyzed the essence of the energy Tiamat required for emergence. The next step was to synthesize and simulate that energy to accelerate the process. Liang transformed into a Siberian husky once more, several tentacles unfurling from his back. They connected to Jarvis's Mind Stone, to the floating time, space, and reality stones, to the anti-life equation in Reg Duo's hand, and to the Blood Sea clone, a clone with the ability to create life. He gathered a vast amount of world power, the kind capable of creating worlds, and poured it into Tiamat. The Celestial's 4 cylinders flared bright again. This power, it's peculiar. It seems very similar to the power we use to create worlds, Tiamat murmured. This is only the beginning. Prepare yourself, Liang said. He began to operate several stones at once. The Space Stone supplied the energy, the Reality Stone reshaped it, and the Mind Stone, guided by Liang's understanding of the mental world, performed the final shaping. Emotional energy, material energy, spiritual energy, complex layers synthesized to mimic human energy, were created through the stones and funneled into Tiamat. This feeling, incredible. I think you succeeded, Liang. Tiamat exclaimed as his body began to glow. The cosmic-formed armor hardened and brightened, his form lengthened and swelled with power. Millions of years' accumulation, catalyzed by Liang's infusion, burst forth like a flood. Heguang Liang exhaled. It was working. Everything would be simpler now. Success is assured, Liang murmured, and kept synthesizing new energy to pour into Tiamat. Then his expression tightened. Tiamat, absorb the energy as fast as you can. Arisham the Judge is here. Far above, crossing the barrier from outside the universe, Arisham descended. He was entirely crimson and immense, magnificent in a way that dwarfed planets. He floated outside the Earth with a palm extended, as if holding a basketball. In his hand, instead of a ball, hovered 10 Eternals, tiny figures bound by rings, unable to move. The celestial member of this planet has disappeared, Arisham's voice boomed. Tell me everything you know, and I will judge. The Eternals were startled. Some looked bewildered, others panicked. We don't know what happened, Judge, one stammered. Ajak, the Eternals captain, said, we were tracking a Siberian husky. It is a dog. We were knocked out by it a while ago. As for the celestial member's disappearance, we don't have any information. Dog, Arisham was silent for a few seconds. I will find the answer from your memories. Arisham the Judge immediately began probing the Eternal's memories. Inside his gigantic palm, the 10 individuals howled in agony as if their brains were being torn from their skulls. Veins bulged across their faces, bodies tensed, every fiber straining against the invisible bonds of the rings. They doubled over in pain but remained held fast. Fortunately for them, Arisham's search was swift. A dog. Tiamat is missing because of the creatures on this planet? Could it be another Agatha? He muttered. In another multiverse, an Earthling named Agatha had successively drained Tiamut and even Arisham's embody. Other Celestials who had come to subdue her had mostly gone and never returned, becoming her sustenance. That Agatha had grown beyond the structure of a single universe, becoming a grave hidden danger to the Celestials. Dangerous shifts across the multiverse explained why more Celestials had not immediately converged to slay her. If a similar creature appeared in this universe, Arisham the Judge felt he must snuff out the threat that could disrupt cosmic order at its root. "Your mission is complete. I will take you away to receive your next assignment," he announced. He lowered his palm, and the 10 Eternals, still bound by the rings, floated away. Ajak, the Eternal Captain, saw that Arisham had no intention of leaving. He dared to ask, "Arisham the Judge, what else do you intend to do? The humans on this planet have violated the laws of universe development. I shall deliver judgment here." A dazzling red light sprang into being in Arisham's hand. He held a compact orb of red energy and slammed his palm toward Earth. Just the sight of his palm, comparable in size to a continental plate, was enough to promise planetary annihilation. "Stop! Arisham the Judge, the celestial you seek is safe. He is currently undergoing God manifestation," Leon cried, arriving at the crucial moment. Leon had accelerated time inside the inner world to speed Tiamut's manifestation, but he still hadn't finished before Arisham acted. To prevent collateral damage, Leon first drew Earth and Moon into his inner world. Then, moving beyond light speed, he collided with Arisham's descending palm. "So it was you who presumptuously tried to absorb the power of a celestial." Arisham sneered, and the energy orb in his hand swelled with lethal force. From the start, his goal had been to force the hidden hand out into the open, elimination being the real intent. The moment Leon struck the energy orb, his expression snapped to steel. His will moved at impossible speed. He captured the stars and planets of the solar system in his mind and drew them into his inner world. In an instant, a brilliant explosion, like a supernova, erupted through the empty solar system. The central detonation swept away asteroids and cosmic medium, tearing matter into dust. Then, as if time itself were reversing, that energy and medium recoiled. Matter condensed back toward a single point. A black hole formed at the explosion's heart. Arisham's casual palm strike had annihilated all matter in the solar system. At the same time, the concentrated energy had birthed a small but savage black hole. Arisham stood before it in silence, the Eternals behind him stunned. "You still live, so it was you who swallowed Tiamat," he roared. From the black hole's center, Leon burst free, his Dormammu armor tattered and his body battered against fearsome gravity. He stabilized himself with the law of space, and as he did, the energy of 3 infinity stones, space, time, and reality, unfolded from him. The ruined solar system reversed, the black hole vanished, asteroids reshaped, matter flowed backward into cohesion. "Infinity stones," Arisham murmured, voice flat. As one of the Celestials from Marvel's first universe, the First Firmament, he was a top-tier force, capable of destroying universes even in an M-body, a material vessel. 3 Infinity Stones were impressive, but not necessarily threatening on their own. Still, Arisham's gaze hardened. In a past encounter with Agatha, who had absorbed Tiamut, he had relied on close combat rather than unleashing universe energy and had been consumed. That lesson made him wary. If Leon had similarly taken Tiamut's power, he could not afford to be complacent. Arisham raised his arm again and condensed universe energy, this time pushing out even greater power. He launched continuous bombardments of cosmic energy, attacks that could tear galaxies apart. Leon spat blood, his Dormammu armor half destroyed. It was the worst damage he had taken in a fight so far. Even with the Infinity Stones, his best hope was to expand the battlefield from the solar system across the Milky Way. "Tiamut, your birthing process is truly long," Leon grinned, eyes burning. He decided that once he grew stronger, he would spar with Arisham again. "For now, Arisham the Judge, look closely. Who exactly are you trying to attack?" he demanded. Within the inner world, the Rage Duo clone used the one mind, one body ability, dissolving into light and dispersing. In Leon's primary body, 2 transformation devices materialized, the Courage Stick, Cosmos, in his left hand and the Miracle Wing transformation device in his right. He held them out level, and both devices flared at once. Using himself as the human host, he transformed into Leto Ultraman. Leto towered, 90,000 kilometers tall, even slightly taller than Arisham. Arisham paused, arms suspended mid-attack, scrutinizing the figure Leon had become. What? His tone climbed a few octaves as realization dawned. A conceptual entity. This. He stared, slowly lowering his arm until it rested behind his back. The Celestials had been forged by the first firmament. Universes are iterative, born and reborn in cyclings of destruction and big bangs. The current Marvel movie universe is a later generation cosmos whose embodiment is eternity. Eternity crafted his own Celestials, and some ancient Celestials are beholden to him. In a clash between Arisham's embody and an agent aligned with eternity, authority was uncertain. Strength alone might not settle the issue. Recognizing the danger of fighting a conceptual entity tied to eternity, Arisham's demeanor softened. He addressed Leon with a new calm. Esteemed sir, this was actually just a misunderstanding. Chapter 409, The Cycle of the Universe. A misunderstanding? Leon reached out and laid a hand on Arisham, the judge's shoulder. The contrast in their sizes and postures made it look like a dignitary visiting a rural school and patting a child's shoulder as if asking about holiday homework. Arisham the judge, what makes you want to destroy Earth without even bothering to learn the truth? Leon's posture in that moment matched that of a lofty, inscrutable, abstract entity. Do you know that Tiamut has already begun to hatch elsewhere with my help? You didn't investigate the facts, and you would recklessly destroy planets that do not conform to the universe's operating rules. Do you wish to destroy this universe? Is eternity forcing you to do this? Arisham the judge's aura visibly weakened. I apologize, Your Excellency. I jumped to conclusions and believed a celestial on that planet had been absorbed. As the judge, Arisham was the celestial who most strictly upheld the universe's laws. Hearing Leon's challenge, he hurried to explain. On a certain Earth in another universe, there was a witch named Agatha who steadily absorbed the powers of several gods, myself included. Because of Agatha's existence and because of my apprehension about Your Excellency's power, I acted rashly. Leon fell silent for a moment, as if he'd just heard some ridiculous tale about a mouse drinking the Pacific. Wait, Agatha can absorb celestials. Agatha was no joke. How could she absorb a god without exploding? Leon found the idea unbelievable. Then he remembered something. His black light clone had sped up its consumption of Tiamut's flesh and blood by drawing the energies of 10 Eternals. Maybe Agatha had used a similar scheme, first draining 10 Eternals, then using Tiamut's goodwill toward Earth as leverage to drain Tiamut itself. That could push her above the Skyfather level and allow her to continue hunting other celestial powers. The ways to grow stronger in this universe were bizarre. One moment you were an ordinary Earthling, the next you could casually threaten the fabric of the cosmos. Even so, Arisham the judge, you were wrong from the start. Leon was about to press the point when he suddenly paused. He waved his hand, drew the sun and the major planets from his inner world, and set them back in their proper places. He used the space and reality stones to restabilize the solar system's gravitational balance. Finally, he released Tiamut, who had finished the emergence. Arisham, the judge, stop! Leon helped me. Tiamut's mental presence flooded the solar system as soon as he appeared, urgently pleading with the judge to relent. When Arisham turned his attention, he saw Leon transformed into a giant abstract entity, his right hand still resting on Arisham's shoulder, the same patronizing, admonishing posture. Tiamut stared in surprise. You, Leon, you know Arisham the judge? We met in conflict. Arisham is apologizing for acting hastily earlier, Leon said. He really did act? Then he should apologize. Leon, you not only helped me, you saved billions of Earthlings, Tiamut declared gratefully. Arisham, the judge, said nothing to refute that, but studied Tiamut with confusion. From his perception, Tiamut showed no abnormalities. He seemed a perfectly nourished, normally developed celestial. How could this be? Tiamut, you were born and Earth is still intact. How did you complete the emergence? Arisham asked. Leon helped me. He used the Infinity Stones to provide the energy I needed, Tiamut replied. Absurd. Arisham snapped angrily. Even if your intentions were pure, how could you accept that? You violate the laws of the universe. In the vast mental domain, Arisham's voice thundered. We Celestials gathered the energies of all, triggered the Big Bang above the six singularities to create the universe, and then created stars, sowing life's seeds. These seeds nurtured intelligent beings who reproduce and, with their wisdom and energy, nourish newborn gods, expand the celestials, and thus create more stars. This cycle of destruction and birth is necessary to maintain the universe's balance and to create more life, and now you have violated it. What Arisham said was not wrong. Much life in the Marvel cosmos had been shaped by the celestials. That was why Leon's black light clone, after devouring the genes of most races across the universe, hadn't grown far. Species diversity was limited when a single creator designed them all. The emergence, then, functioned as a cruel but pragmatic mechanism. Intelligent life gave of itself to feed the creators, sustaining cosmic growth. If my birth would mean Earth's destruction and the deaths of billions, then I would rather the emergence had never occurred. Tiamat answered in a deep voice. Foolishness, Erisham retorted, pointing at him. You are meant to create stars, to spawn more life. The Earthlings who die because of you are sacrifices for the entire universe. No, you are wrong, Arisham the judge. All of you Celestials are wrong. Leon interjected suddenly. Erisham's righteous reprimand faltered. He looked at Leon and, to contain the situation, adopted a milder, more diplomatic tone. Your Excellency, perhaps you have only just come into being and your understanding of the Celestials' function is incomplete. He tried to press his point. Destruction and rebirth are the core order for the stable development of the universe. The universe grows through cycles. If no new Celestials are born to make new suns and life for the ever-expanding universe, resources will be exhausted and all will end. Leon nodded slightly. I understand your duties very well. The Celestials' theory of cyclical cosmic development resembled Thanos' logic. Both sought balance through sacrifice. Thanos by culling life, the Celestials by sacrificing small numbers for larger-scale creation and survival. But wrong is wrong, Leon said. Everything else you do might be right, but you were wrong to implant a celestial seed into Earth. Erisham regarded Leon in silence. For a moment, he might have thought Leon was an abstract entity without a moral compass. Then, with a hint of coldness, he asked, Does Earth hold some special meaning for your Excellency? I grew up on Earth, Leon replied. So yes, it means more to me than you can know. Leon patted Erisham's shoulder once more. But, Erisham the judge, do you know about the Time Variance Authority? Chapter 410. Chapter what? The people at the anchor point are so scary. When Leon addressed him as Ari, if Arisham the judge's helmet could have shown expressions, the rim of his mouth would have twitched. He had no idea what Leon was getting at. He replied coolly, I know of the TVA, but the Celestials don't have much to do with them. Then you've heard of the anchor person? Leon pressed. The anchor person? Arisham faltered. He'd heard the term before, but had never paid it much mind. From the Celestials' point of view, the TVA was hardly worth serious consideration. A concept invented by them wouldn't amount to much. Leon noticed his dismissive tone and explained, the anchor person is the core of a world. If that core dies or is destroyed, the entire universe tied to it will die with it. Even if you Celestials churned out 10,000 or 100 million suns every day, it would be worthless. Erisham the judge and Tiamat both froze. If the anchor person dies, the universe dies? How can that be? One being tied to the whole universe, what sort of person could that be? Some biological son of eternity? If they died, would countless beings in the universe and the seeds of so many Celestials be buried with them? Even if eternity himself died, the universe shouldn't simply vanish. Erisham could hardly believe it. You're joking, aren't you? I'm not joking. Isn't this serious enough? Leon's two large eyes brightened with something like righteous certainty. With Legidua's presence lending weight, he sounded entirely convincing. A conceptual entity like him had no reason to fabricate such a thing. Arisham felt the conviction settle in and murmured, No wonder so many universes inexplicably slide toward destruction. The anchor person. I must find them and protect them as the universe's core. He said slowly, with sudden resolve. Leon patted Arisham on the head. Ari, the best protection you can give is to stop planting celestial seeds on Earth. Almost all anchor persons are Earthlings. When you plant seeds on Earth, you're effectively strapping a time bomb to the anchor person's life. When the bomb goes off, the anchor person will either die or come after you from what's left of the planet. It's possible your actions have contributed to the destruction of some universes. By the way, Ari, have you destroyed any Earths? No way. What kind of expression is that? You didn't actually. This is terrible. That would be like destroying a universe with your own hands. Tiamat, what happens if the judge destroys a universe without cause? Will the leader have him executed? After speaking to Arisham, Leon turned to Tiamat. If Arisham had been human, he would be sweating now. Despite Leon's loud, affectionate pats, Arisham stood ramrod straight, silent, as if he had suddenly gone still. His warm form had frozen in place, a living statue, no acting needed for a zombie role. Tiamat, too, was visibly shaken. Beheading isn't necessary, but Leon, is what you said really true? Leon stroked the smooth helmet. It's worse than I said. You can go to the TVA and ask them for the details. Tiamat realized this was far more serious than he'd thought. The Celestials had been planting seeds of future gods on Earth in countless universes, even assigning Eternals to guard them and sending heavyweights like Arisham to escort those god seeds. Now there was talk of an anchor person whose death was linked to universal annihilation, and all anchor persons were Earthlings. Tiamat's mind flicked to an Earth comic character called the Joker. Suddenly, the Celestials' actions felt like a cosmic joke gone wrong, especially Arisham. He glanced sideways at his comrade. Arisham had been locked in silence for a long while, the red of his armor seeming to deepen as if in a trance. Tiamat sympathized so strongly that he would have wanted to hide in the sun. Thank you for the information, Leon. This is very important. Tiamat took Leon's fingers in both of his and shook them vigorously, his small body making the gesture almost frantic. He grasped the urgency and quickly excused himself. We should leave now and tell the others. We need to alert my counterparts across the multiverse. Right, Arisham? For a long moment, Arisham didn't respond. If it weren't for the 6 barrels on his head still glowing, Leon and Tiamat might have thought him dead. Arisham! Hey, I said we should go. We need to go back now. Tiamat shouted, his voice cutting through the mental realm. He sounded near panic. After Leon's news, his state of mind had become fragile. Those germinating on Earth were versions of him all over the multiverse. Compared to Arisham, he felt just as compromised. Tiamat's shouting finally seemed to bring Arisham back. The giant celestial slowly moved his head and nodded toward Tiamat. Go! Arisham had always been taciturn but decisive. Now he became virtually a man of one word. He seized Tiamat in a huge palm, placed a hand out, opened a deep spatial rift, and prepared to leave. Wait, Ari, Leon called suddenly. The 2 Celestials halted, assuming Leon had more to say. Leon released Lejuo's one heart, one body, and returned to his original form. The wounds from Arisham's palm strike had fully healed, though the Dormammu armor covering him lay in tatters. That armor's resistance limit was meant to withstand a blow capable of destroying a star system in a single strike. Yet it had been ruined, a testament to the casual might of Arisham's hand. Leon pointed to the shredded armor. Ari, before you go, can you look at this armor one more time? It's followed me through my growth. It means a lot to me. Arisham stood silent, not immediately understanding the appeal. Tiamat said something to him, and after a moment's thought, Arisham nodded. He raised a hand and tore open a spatial tear a short distance away. A celestial corpse drifted out of the rift, clad in crimson armor, 6 barrels on its head. This is compensation. Goodbye, sir. Arisham gave Leon the corpse of another Arisham the judge, nodded slightly, then stepped through the passage with Tiamat and 10 Eternals. The rift closed seconds later. Leon cradled the enormous corpse in his arms and stared. This is another Arisham the judge. He was speechless. The part about the anchor person in this chapter is purely a wild idea. Please do not delve into it. Chapter 411, 2.5 years. It seems Tiamat understands me best. He knows I need the genes of a powerful being. A whole corpse would be even better. Leon examined the corpse of Arisham the judge. It looked intact enough that it probably wasn't the one Agatha had drained dry. Agatha's prize had been absorbed straight into nihility. In a multiverse this vast, a few dead Arishams wasn't unusual. Maybe Infinite Ultron had gotten to this one. Leon casually stored the body in his inner world and left it for the blacklight virus to absorb later. Right now, the gap between his black light clone and a celestial as powerful as Arisham was still too great. There wasn't yet a direct, shared pathway between the Eternal and Tiamat. He'd have to wait until his strength broke through further before he could fully consume a being like this. Besides, he didn't have to devour every scrap himself. He could leave some for Tony to experiment with, see if Tony could forge a celestial armor. A celestial's corpse was a treasure trove. It deserved careful planning. Leon turned and flew back toward Earth. Below the dispersion layer, a mass of satellites had already clustered in orbit. Fighter jets circled beneath, and airborne aircraft carriers floated in formation. Tony piloted his anti-Superman armor through space alongside Kara and Diana. More than a dozen ships followed, filled with mages from Kamar Taj, as well as Wanda, Banner, and others. They looked ready to join the fight at a moment's notice. Leon shook his head. He'd gathered a large family and an enterprise. He'd been tracking the movements of Earth's forces for some time, but he'd logged back in under his Legier Duo account. The 3-year period had ended. The Dragon King returned to his place. There was no reason to start another battle with Arisham the Judge. Given how Arisham had left, Leon probably owed him thanks anyway. He approached the dispersion layer, and the others drew near. Tony tossed out a nanomaterials communicator. Those red and gold iron buckets earlier, those were the Celestials that maintain universal order, right? Leon nodded and slipped the device on. The nanomaterials formed a mask and linked him into the channel. Tony's curiosity burst out. What did they come for? Did you mess with something and get caught? And when did you start turning into Ultraman? You never called me over when you transformed to go do bad stuff? Tony's knowledge of Celestials came only from Marvel Comics, and the cinematic Celestials didn't match his expectations. Before Leon could answer, Diana defended him. Leon is a savior in our world. How could he do something bad? Tony, why do you always jump to that conclusion? Wong, Mordo, and the others piled on with their own reproaches in the channel. Smiling, Leon spread his hands at Tony with an expression that said, "They're right." He took Diana and Kara's hands and flew back to Earth. Tony covered his faceplate with a hand, his head aching. Stop it, stop. Hey, Mordo, did you just say a word that started with F? Banner, you're scolding me too? It was a joke to keep everyone relaxed. All right, Wanda, calm down. We can talk about it on Earth. The sudden appearance of 3 gigantic beings near Earth had made every human realize the universe wasn't just for humans. Fear shadowed everyone's hearts, only to be swept away the next day by the headlines. Superman solves alien giant. Leon, meanwhile, had finished an entire night of fighting after he returned. He sat on his balcony and began to tally his gains. Aside from Arisham's corpse, the greatest prize was the feedback he'd received from the concepts of justice and order. Helping Tiamat manifest, preventing Earth's destruction, saving the solar system from Arisham, those actions registered as contributions to cosmic order. The feedback catapulted the Legiduo clone's power by the equivalent of an entire stellar system. Even then, facing Arisham would only make the judge exert a little more effort. It was not enough to fully satisfy him. The information Leon had given Arisham also counted as acts of maintaining justice and order and would likely bring further feedback in the future. With Tiamat's problem resolved, no one in this universe can threaten me, Leon thought. As for beyond this universe, I hope things aren't already at their worst. A year earlier, he'd been worried about the Chitauri invasion and distracted by Endgame. Those crises that once kept him on edge had become small matters. He had grown. He was now one of the tall figures in his universe, beginning to look outward at ever more dangerous threats. Cultivate until I become immortal. Then the Legiduo clone will operate in other universes. He bathed in sunlight and closed his eyes. 6 months later, Leon received a message from the Super Scrolls. They had found the Power Stone. He instructed them to send the gem back to Earth and to keep trying to take the Mind Stone. He returned to his cultivation. A year after that, the Super Scrolls sent another message. They had seized the Mind Stone from Thanos. The fight had become a galaxy-spanning war that dragged in more than half a star sector. For years, the Super Scrolls had been skirmishing with Thanos' forces across systems, bleeding both sides, until the conflict widened. The Shi'ar and the Kree had been involved from the start. Then other powers joined. The Land of Nihility, Omnipotent City, Counter-Earth. Zeus raised his divine weapon, Ego the living planet sent his minions, and the High Evolutionary vowed to wipe out the Skrulls. Some came to steal the Mind Stone for themselves. Others wanted to kidnap the Super Skrulls to breed with them. The melee ended with Zeus badly wounded and retreating. Ego abducted Star-Lord only to be killed by his captive. The High Evolutionary was ambushed by a raccoon and died on the spot. The two great empires fared a bit better, but still suffered heavy losses. The Kree military was annihilated. The Shi'ar lost most of its armed forces. Thanos himself lost the Mind Stone, his Black Order sacrificed themselves, and two of his daughters were reportedly taken by the Skrulls to be delivered to their master as weapons. Thanos now scoured the universe for clues to the other stones, desperately preparing to reclaim his old territories and take revenge. The Super Skrull forces were depleted, so Leon told them to hold the Land of Nihility and make the most of their remaining glory. The one who profited most from the war was Leon. He gained the Mind Stone, and with it, another surge in strength. The fighting left everyone bloodied and exhausted, and a temporary peace followed. Duo gained more feedback from the Order side and grew by the power of several stellar systems. 2.5 years had passed since Arishem and Tiamut departed. Leon's main body floated before the sun, breaking through once more, this time toward perfect genes. Duo's hands hung loosely at his sides as he floated almost directly above the sun, eyes tightly closed as if asleep. Sunlight threaded through every dark strand of his hair, igniting his perfectly proportioned body. A faint golden aura radiated from him. If Tony were here, he'd surely joke that Duo had eaten hundreds of fireflies and they were still glowing. Then, abruptly, Duo opened his eyes. His height began to climb like bamboo in spring, 1.9 meters, 2 meters, then 3. He quickly outgrew human proportions. An energy storm churned near the sun, a deluge of power sweeping toward him and forming a vast vortex. The space stone within his world poured its energy as well. Immense currents flooded into Duo, bathing every cell. His body swelled wildly. 10,000 kilometers, 20,000 kilometers, 90,000 kilometers. At last, Duo's main body attained perfect genes. Every cell and joint glowed faintly with a light almost identical to sunlight. Different life forms reached perfection in different ways. The Duo clone's ascent was a sublime embrace of light, and the Aurora, the blacklight virus, perfected itself through assimilation of countless superior genes, adaptable to any extreme environment. Duo's perfection, however, was to encompass the full breadth of Kryptonian traits, limitless potential rooted in Kryptonian heritage. He had fully analyzed the trillions of Kryptonian gene templates in the Life Codex and integrated them into himself. When the last template slotted into place, his genes reached 10,081 times. He had achieved perfect genes, the entire spectrum of Kryptonian traits across the DCEU, scientists and warriors, generals and judges. Any Kryptonian powerhouse in history could find an echo of themselves in him. Basked in sunlight, Duo felt his strength surge. In the Starry Sky system, gene evolution suited the Superman bloodline perfectly. Reaching 10,081 times was breaking through to perfect genes. For Kryptonians, that meant an unparalleled qualitative leap. Although his realm remained pinned at the peak of a world lord, his physical potential seemed boundless. The power he gained every second, even surpassing planetary-level increases, kept accelerating, compounding like interest that kept converting into principle. Now I might have the potential to become a golden Superman, he murmured. Just that I'd still need to sunbathe for tens of thousands of years, like the Sorcerer Supreme in DC 1,000,000, before I'd actually transform. He moved his limbs, testing. His 90,000-kilometer body felt no discomfort aside from sheer size. Aside from the unlimited strength growth and the ever-increasing acceleration, nothing else seems different, he said, half proud. Slowly, his body began to shrink. From the Joe inheritance in the Starry Sky world came a secret art: change your size without affecting combat power. Duo had learned it after acquiring the Duo clone, and now all three of his perfect gene bodies could compress to normal human size without losing effectiveness. His main body could return to its nightly activities as usual. He hadn't produced an heir yet. Now that his genes had reached perfection, conceiving would become even harder. But offspring are only an extension of a finite life. If one attains effectively infinite life, children matter less. He returned to normal size, donned a new set of heavy treasure armor. He'd replaced the Dormammu suit destroyed earlier with stronger gear from the Time Fortress, and flew back to Earth. He didn't bother naming this battlesuit. He landed quietly on his own balcony. It was July 2011. Shirley was studying at the Supreme Mage Academy. Natasha and her sister were running the company. Diana was teaching at the academy and dabbling in blacksmithing, or rather, alchemy. Wanda was about to begin her senior year and was preparing her thesis. Kara was sunning herself on the balcony. Legieduo took care to move lightly after his long stint near the sun. Feeling peckish, he grabbed a slice of cake from the dining table and pulled out his communicator to check messages. An avalanche of notifications flooded the Avengers group chat. This group was always like that. If you blinked, there were 99 plus unread messages. Even Hawkeye found time to gossip mid-mission. The old men never ran out of nonsense. Sometimes equipment talk, sometimes comments about the girl's legs. He opened the chat expecting the usual banter, but this thread was different. Hey everyone, while Legieduo's away, let's have a meeting at 5 o'clock today. Captain America 1. Hello everyone, I'll attend the 5 o'clock meeting. It's good to see everyone again. Why are we avoiding Superman? Captain America 2. Based on what I know of Tony, he probably wants to do something it'd be awkward to do with Superman around. Young Cap, you don't have to transcribe your voice-to-text line for line. And old Cap, please don't spout nonsense. Thank you. Someone should tell Cap he doesn't need to be so formal in the group. He's been serious for 3 years. Captain America 1. Tony, watch your language. Tony, what do you want from us? He's been distracted lately. This must be important. Thor, can I bring Jane? Also, she likes spaghetti. Tony, remember to prepare some. Is Jane on Earth too? Seriously, this is important and you're bringing Jane. Wait, bring her. I have a job for her. What? She's just a normal person. I'm not bringing her. Are you kidding me? Tony, what are you planning behind Legieduo's back? He's my boss. Stark Industries is half mine too. I'm exercising my shareholder rights, don't tell him. Hulk. Oh, great, Hulk smashed Banner's phone. Sir, perhaps we can get to the point instead of hosting a tea party in the group. Chapter proposal. All right, let's get to the point. No more guessing. I'm going to propose to Pepper. Be at the base at 5 o'clock. We need to plan this. You? Propose? I got my body back. You? Propose? Hey, Banner, you broke the formation. Tony is going to propose. Unbelievable. Will Leon propose to us too? If he doesn't propose to me? Don't overthink it, pretty girl. Knowing Leon, he'd change his nationality to somewhere like Bangladesh or Pakistan and marry everyone at once. That sounds about right. Why are we talking about Leon? Why are you all popping up now? Who usually lurk anyway? Remember, 5 o'clock. Everyone be there. This is important. Leon stared up at the projected chat log, head tilted back. Tony? Propose? The two words felt oddly out of place. For a moment, he wondered if he'd opened the wrong Earth's feed. He checked the year on the feed, 2011. In the movies, Tony and Pepper didn't marry for another 6 years. Why would Tony be proposing to Pepper behind his back? He'd spent 2 days perfecting his genetics breakthrough, had broadcast a group message when he'd left Earth, and yet Tony somehow used the opportunity to plan a secret proposal. The initial messages were 2 days old. Leon scrolled down. Apparently, the whole team had been mobilized. Even Kara, who usually lounged around and soaked up the sun, was involved. Yesterday's log read like a script. Tony, is everything ready? There can't be any mistakes. Thor, don't worry. Jane has successfully lured Pepper out shopping. Wanda, Diana and I have arranged a chance encounter. Captain America 1, camera in position. Captain America 2, microphone in position. Hawkeye, fireworks in position. Carter, backstage command in position. Kara, big villain in position. Hulk can go berserk anytime. Tony, excellent. Check the time. We'll act precisely at 7 o'clock tonight. First, Kara appears in her nanotech armor, masked as the big villain, knocks Thor and me from the sky into the street. Then Diana and Wanda stage a rescue and chase Kara off. When Kara flees, she says she'll make the Avengers pay and takes me with her. Thor, you tell Jane to say something to make Pepper run after us. Next, Hulk goes berserk. He appears and gives Pepper trouble. After Pepper overcomes the difficulty and rescues me, that's when the fireworks team, props team, and camera team go live. Remember the moment I'm lying in Pepper's arms proposing. The mage's spells send colored lights into the sky. The fireworks must light up the entire New York coastline. The ferries and helicopters should display colored lights and play music. All of them, lights and music. When I'm at her feet, open the ring box. Captain America 1, camera received. Captain America 2, microphone received. Tony, don't just confirm it, do it. Go, go, go. Leon couldn't help the twitch at his mouth. No wonder Tony had waited until after Leon left Earth. With a plan this elaborate, Tony being kidnapped in the first act wouldn't make sense if Leon had been around. That man really was absurdly romantic. A few hours later, Jarvis had uploaded several videos. The first was the proposal itself. The camera followed Pepper the whole time, catching every emotion: worry, anger, fear, surprise, awe. The footage looked handheld, the cameraman weaving through the city with unnerving steadiness. Midway through, Pepper burst into photon energy and launched after Kara and Tony. The camera slipped and slid between skyscrapers with the man behind it apparently doing feats of parkour while sweating like mad. The clip ended perfectly. Pepper's heroic rescue, the aftermath of her saving Tony, and then the fireworks. The New York skyline lit up. Ferries and helicopters played wedding marches. At the center of the lights and music, Tony opened the ring box while Pepper hid her face and cried. The camera set down, and a scattered group of people rushed in, clapping and shouting for an answer. Other videos showed aerial footage from Jarvis and Tony's armor, plus behind-the-scenes clips of the Avengers' preparations. Leon watched, amused and moved. "Holy crap," he muttered. "Does it have to be this extravagant? If this is Tony, then when it's my turn, I'll need to light up a few suns to be dramatic," he joked to himself, but he found he was smiling. Tony and Pepper meant a lot to him. Their early marriage was good news. He was just about to close the projection and go find Tony when Jarvis's call came in. Leon accepted. "Young Master Leon, welcome back to Earth," Jarvis said as his holographic form appeared and bowed. "Mr. Stark and Miss Potts' wedding will be this Sunday. You are formally invited to attend as the best man." "That fast? He proposed yesterday and set the date today?" Leon sounded surprised. "Mr. Stark wishes to conclude the wedding as soon as possible," Jarvis replied. Leon nodded. "I'll be there. I just didn't expect that we celebrated Tony's 41st birthday only 2 months ago, and now he's getting married." At the end of May, Tony had turned 41. The 2.5-hand aerial fortress Leon had given him earlier had officially become Tony's property when he turned 40. Neither of them paid much thought to the Red Room's aerial fortress now. "Jarvis, help me pick a suit. Send some designs," Leon said. "Yes, young master." In an instant, dozens of suit designs flashed up on the projection. Jarvis explained, "These styles best complement your temperament." Leon flicked through them. Each selection altered his battle suit on the feed. He tried a few on and casually asked, "Do you know why Tony suddenly decided to propose? He never mentioned it to me." "The reason is very simple," Jarvis said, almost smiling. "Miss Potts is pregnant." Leon froze mid-scroll. "Pepper is pregnant? That came out of nowhere." "Well, she drags Tony to the gym every day, keeps him up at night, and often leaves him looking pale. It would be surprising if she weren't." Leon remembered Tony's always too thin look during meetings and couldn't help smiling. "So I'm going to be an uncle. Uncle Leon, that's going to take some getting used to." "Indeed," Jarvis said. "Mr. Stark also hopes that you, young master, will help name his child." Leon thought for a moment. "If it's a girl, Morgan. If it's a boy, James." Morgan, Tony and Pepper's daughter in the films. James, the name Tony had used in some comic storylines for a son created through genetic means. Leon's choices felt right, and the idea of helping name the child of two people he cared about made him unexpectedly warm. Chapter 414, Tony and Pepper's Wedding. It was the 4th Saturday in July, the height of summer. Under the blazing sun, Tony and Pepper's wedding took place in Central Park, long regarded as New York's wedding sanctuary. Beneath a grove of sweet gum trees beginning to turn brilliant orange, floral arches lined the stone path across the lawn. Tony and Pepper, he in a suit and she in a wedding gown, walked arm in arm down the path toward the altar as fireworks burst overhead. A crowd had gathered. Luxury cars and official vehicles were parked outside the park. Politicians and business leaders mingled with people who had no real connection to the Starks, but had rushed in anyway, especially children. If Happy and Ethan hadn't blocked the mob ahead of time, Tony would have been swarmed before the ceremony even started by kids waving autograph books and pens. The wedding began. Tony and Pepper exchanged vows, slid rings onto each other's fingers, and sealed it with a kiss in front of the officiant. Applause and cheers rose up from the assembled guests. Peggy Carter dabbed at the corner of her eye with a tissue and applauded, visibly moved. Then came the interactive portion of the ceremony. Lion was first to the stage. "Welcome, everyone. You all know me. Lion Stark, Tony's younger brother." He took the microphone and smiled. Applause rippled through the crowd. "Maybe Tony isn't the easiest person to like. Colonel Rhodes used to tell me when we were kids, your brother is a real headache." The audience laughed. "But today is probably the most considerate, most handsome, and most approachable he's ever been. I'm teasing him, and he hasn't even tried to argue back. After all, the only person who didn't hate him has finally said yes, so he can't go exposing his true self and doom the bride to regret." He grinned. "So, for the friends here who are tempted to pull a gun and shoot him, please hold off. You can line up at Avengers Tower tomorrow." Rhodes cupped his hands and shouted back, "That's right, that's what I said." The crowd roared. When the laughter subsided, Lion continued, "Truth is, I also didn't like Tony at first." He looked out at the guests with mock solemnity. "Tony and I have known each other for 21 years, almost a lifetime. In our early days in Los Angeles, Tony would always bring a new girlfriend around and ask me, 'Hey, Lion, what do you think of this beauty?'" More laughter. Lion waved a hand. "What could I say? I told him over and over, dump her, she's not a keeper. And then one day Tony brought Pepper home. You know what I thought the first time I saw Pepper? I thought that's his other half, because she was just so normal. Compared to the other girls Tony dated, Pepper was unquestionably the most ordinary woman in the world." He laughed and mimed grabbing at someone's pant leg. "I was only a year old then, still crawling on the floor, and I grabbed Tony's pant leg and told him, 'What are you waiting for? Go for it. She's the one.'" Wong, Mordo, and Banner laughed until they almost toppled. And you know what Tony said? He said, "I'd sooner believe Captain America is still alive than believe you, a baby." At that, Captain America stood and waved to the crowd. Pepper's smile widened until she showed her gums. Lion pointed at Captain America, grinning. "See, Captain America is alive, so Tony listened to me and married Pepper." The applause swelled. Lion looked at the newlyweds. "Finally, a piece of advice. Don't ask me for relationship advice anymore. From now on, you two will love each other profoundly for the rest of your lives, and you will never be apart. Thank you." He left the stage to warm applause. Pepper and Tony smiled and clapped. The remainder of the interactive program was a parade of bridesmaids and groomsmen giving speeches and performances. Banner, Wong, Mordo, Captain America, Peggy Carter, even Thor and Loki came up to trade a few Asgardian jokes. Then it was time for the buffet. Tony had gone all out. Red wine, brandy, vodka, lobster, king crab, tuna. Everything anyone could want, free for the taking. "You brat, you just had to bring up my embarrassing past at my wedding," Tony complained, standing with Lion by a long white wooden table piled with seafood. Pepper had already been swept away by bridesmaids to greet the socialites. Tony should have been entertaining the politicians and business people, but stubborn as ever, he wanted a drink and to shoot the breeze with his brother. "I did give you my blessing," Lion said, "and you didn't even tell me about the proposal. This is me repaying evil with good." Lion looked sharp in a black tuxedo. Tony shook his head. "Actually, I wasn't sure at first. I thought about it a long time. Everything would change after this. I didn't know if I could be a good father, a good husband. I was really scared I'd turn into our father." Tony's expression darkened. "That old man." Lion patted his arm. "You're not him. Besides, Howard loved you. He just wasn't good at showing it. That's the one thing you two have in common. You talk about him like you knew him, Tony said, swatting Lion's hand away. You were a baby. Tony popped a shrimp into his mouth. Actually, the mass message you sent a few days ago when you left Earth is what made me decide to stop hesitating. You know how I get. I overthink everything. But the moment the idea popped into my head, I sent out a meeting notice in the group. I didn't give myself a chance to back out. His eyes grew thoughtful. The pajama boy was right when he said, with great power comes great responsibility. Sometimes you've got to accept responsibility for yourself and for others. That's what being a superhero is supposed to be. Lion watched him and realized how marriage had already softened him into a different role. Yeah, Tony's right, Lion was about to say when Thor and Loki joined them. Thor always seemed to bring Loki along whenever he came to Earth. His doting, theatrical devotion made for good entertainment. Last year, when Thor had come to help Loki awaken his power, he'd bumped into Jane Foster, who was out on a survey, and the spark between them stuck. Now he split his time between Loki and Jane. Once Father wakes up and gives his blessing, I plan to ask Jane to marry me, Thor said. She's brilliant and impossibly busy. Maybe marriage will give us more time together. Tony puffed his chest out a moment in pride. Pepper runs a huge company, Stark Industries. She brought clean energy to the world. She's undeniably the most important woman of this century. Thor narrowed his eyes, amused. Jane's working on a project that could win a Nobel Prize. She studies the 9 realms. She could change an entire star system. She's the greatest. They immediately began arguing whose partner was more exceptional, and Lion could only look on speechless. He was about to use Wanda as an example to one-up them both when a red light flashed at his feet. He frowned. No way. I haven't even said anything yet, and Cow's already here? Chapter 415. Requests for help came one after another. Wanda, I'm sorry, but not this time. I can't just sneak away from Tony's wedding. Leon muttered, silently declining Wanda's invitation. For the past 2 years, every time he ran into the Wanda from a parallel world, nothing ever went properly. Sometimes Diana would grumble that old wizard Shazam had been right about him back then. So when Wanda extended another urgent-sounding summons, Leon's thoughts immediately drifted to familiar trouble. After he refused, the scarlet magic circle of chaos magic that had formed around his feet dissipated. Tony and Thor didn't notice. They were still locked in a heated debate over whose girlfriend was more impressive, pitting careers, intelligence, and looks against each other. Tony finally won by pointing out he was already married to Pepper, while Thor was still not. Jane might be great, but she's my girlfriend. Thor protested. Pepper's already my wife, and we're about to have a lovely little Stark. That's my point, Tony crowed. Jane is an amazing person, sure, but she's just a girlfriend. Pepper's my wife, and we're about to have a Stark child. Thor racked his brain for a retort, but came up empty. Loki's dry. Brother, I think he's right, finished him off. Thor left, looking dejected. Victorious, Tony crossed his arms and smirked at Leon. Thor was doomed from the start. He's just stubborn. Pepper's obviously better than Jane. I just helped him see it. So should I clap? Leon said, rubbing the back of his hand and trying not to laugh. You guys are ridiculous. Don't be a killjoy. Don't you think Pepper's amazing? Tony bumped him with an elbow, still holding a plate of seafood. By the way, Jarvis said you named your nephew James? I thought you'd go with Clark or Jonathan. I can see it, Tony. You just want to latch on to Clark, Leon said, shaking his head. And I think Pepper's having a girl. You sure about that? Damn it, you didn't use X-ray vision to check, did you? Tony widened his eyes for effect. It's only a guess. They walked along the long table, eating and chatting, when Wanda's urgent voice called from behind. Leon. They turned. Wanda floated toward them in a white bridesmaid dress, her hands glowing with chaos magic. In midair, she crossed her arms, and the white dress flashed into a scarlet magic robe and a witch's headpiece. Something's happened in the parallel world, Leon. She landed in front of him. And it's serious. The other Wanda contacted me. Leon frowned before he could ask more. An orange-yellow rectangular portal blinked into existence beside them, and a head poked out. A Spider-Man popped through, practically bouncing. Leon, perfect! There you are. It was the Holland Spider, the movie universe Peter Parker. coming through a TVA portal on some mission. Something, something really important just happened in your neighboring universe. Thanos, wait. Peter started rattling off at a mile a minute, then suddenly noticed the wedding attire around him. Oh my god, is someone dead? Is Thanos here too? Oh no, these people are in white dresses. Is someone getting married? He was breathless and all over the place. Am I at the wrong time? Is it Mr. Edith Stark's wedding? The captain's? Oh, it's Tony. It's Tony's wedding, Leon cut in, setting down his plate. Mr. Stark, oh my god, I'm so sorry. Did I mess up again? I wasn't supposed to come now. I didn't even bring a gift. I'm really sorry. Peter began patting himself down for a present. In his skin-tight suit, there wasn't much to rummage through. After a desperate search, he produced a tattered, nearly empty wallet. "Aw, that's fine, kid. That's plenty," Tony said. Putting his own plate down and gently taking the wallet, he slipped it into a compartment in his suit and wagged a finger at Peter. "You make me feel like I should be giving you an allowance." "Okay, so what happened?" Leon asked, impatient. Peter had been talking in circles for minutes. "It's Thanos, Peter hesitated, looking around at the wedding. "Is this the time? Should I be saying this at a wedding? Maybe I should come back later." Peter fidgeted. "Or I could wait and sit through the wedding first. I've actually never been to Mr. Stark's wedding." Tony smacked his forehead. "Just say it. Seriously, it's been 3 years. How is the TVA not bankrupt from you guys?" "Even the TVA can get alarmed," Leon said, his mind already shifting into problem mode. "If it's the movie universe's Thanos, who knows what kind of multiverse crises it could trigger. Before we jump to the parallel world, we should check the TVA." Tony glanced at Pepper across the lawn, then ran a finger over the world ring on his own hand. When they'd exchanged rings earlier, it had been more symbolic. Tony and Pepper had actually traded the world rings and then given them back. He withdrew the arc reactor stored in the ring and set it against his chest. Nanotech fanned out across him in practiced lines. The latest anti-Superman armor, 2.5 years of upgrades, sealed over him, gleaming coldly in the sunlight. "A superhero wedding needs a spectacle," Tony said, patting Leon's shoulder with a confident grin. "Jarvis, tell Pepper I'll be back before dark." He nudged Peter toward the portal. "Come on, kid." Peter squealed. "Wait, Mr. Stark, wait!" But Tony strode through the portal anyway. Leon and Wanda exchanged a look, shrugged, and followed. Chapter 4 and 16. There is no mind gem here. The TVA's high-level command room was still overwhelmingly orange. Orange ceiling, orange walls. B-15, with her short curly hair, stood watching the large orange screen with a serious expression. Except for her, black from skin to clothes, most of the room was a blaze of orange. An orange portal suddenly opened behind her. "Wait, Mr. Stark, I think you should finish the wedding first." Hollandspider's noisy voice announced himself before he stepped through. He was always loud. B-15 arched an eyebrow and turned around, visibly brightening. Then her expression froze when she saw who had arrived. "Iron Man? Why did you bring this playboy back? Where's Superman? Oh, Superman, you finally made it!" She brightened again and walked past Tony and Hollandspider, grabbing Leon's hand and shaking it with blunt enthusiasm. Her disdain for Iron Man was plain in her tone. After Leon and Wanda stepped out of the portal, the orange door shut behind them. "Long time no see, B-15. What's the situation? We need the briefing." Leon scanned the screen. B-15's face went grave. "It's Thanos. He's disturbing the multiverse." She led them to the screen and started playing a scene from one timeline. Earth, Wakanda. Thanos' army blotted out the sun, ranks stretching from sky to ground. The hulking purple warlord stood at the front, radiating an abyssal presence like an immovable mountain. Opposite him were the Wakandan army and the Avengers. Captain America and Iron Man stood at the lead. The Mind Stone, one of the last two, "Give it to me," Thanos called. He extended his right hand toward the Avengers. His left hand wore the Infinity Gauntlet. 4 stones were already in place. Only the Mind Stone and the Time Stone were missing. Captain America shook his head slowly, gripping his shield. "Where's the doctor you kidnapped? What did you do to him?" In the TVA, everyone turned to look at Little Spider, who had paused the feed. "We need a little explanation here," Hollandspider said, waving his hands. "You might not know the whole story yet, but this is amazing. My third time facing off with the universe-level villain Thanos." The first time, Mr. Stark, Dr. Stephen Strange and I went to Thanos' home planet together. He hesitated. It was basically a wasteland. Get to the point. Tony rubbed his forehead. All right, all right. Stephen gave Thanos the time stone to save Mr. Stark, Peter blurted. In that version, Strange was taken away because he didn't call the Avengers for help. Maybe in the future he had to do that. Tony nodded. He already knew how the original timeline unfolded. Old Captain America had explained it in detail, but he wanted to give little Spider room to improvise. Okay, that's enough. Don't pause during the viewing, Tony said. Scene continues. That doctor? Thanos sneered on the recording. Don't worry. After he hands over the time stone, he'll live for the moment. After that, fate will decide everything. Give me the Mind Stone. Not unless I die, and everyone behind me dies with me. Captain America tightened his grip. Iron Man engaged his thrusters and rose into the air. This guy's a monster, but he's right. That's exactly what I'd say. Thanos looked at the two of them. I know you. You two aren't the ones who can stop me. He clenched his left hand and the reality stone flared. The environment shimmered and shifted like a TV channel switch, transformed into his home, Titan. My home, Titan, was once beautiful, Thanos said. But like other worlds, it had limited resources and a growing population. He spoke calmly, with terrible conviction. I foresaw its extinction and proposed a solution, random, fair, selfless, without class distinction. Make some people disappear. Captain America stared. You mean to wipe out part of the population? Half of the population, to be precise. A madman. That plan is impossible. Captain America's voice was raw. The people on Titan thought I was a madman once, too. Thanos looked up to the sky with the measured gaze of someone certain he'd seen the truth. I foresaw everything, and still Titan died. I realized the universe is ignorant, and I had to bring them hope myself. He touched his thumb and forefinger together. Once I have all 6 stones, one snap will have every world's population. They won't suffer, he continued flatly. They will simply dissipate into ash. See my mercy. Hand over the Mind Stone. I won't harm you. This isn't an invasion. Everything will be left to fate. Captain America tightened his grip on his shield. No, this is an invasion. He said it slowly, deliberately. Avengers assemble. The Avengers and the Wakandan army charged. But Thanos, armed with 4 stones, was nearly unstoppable, and he held himself back. Each time he clenched his fist, a stone on the gauntlet flashed. Warriors fell not always from mortal wounds, but were rendered incapacitated, removed from the fight. Thanos showed no intent to slaughter. He planned to leave the culling to the snap. Iron Man and Captain America fell again and again while trying to stop him. They couldn't kill him, and he didn't kill them back. Then Banner climbed out of the wrecked Veronica armor, shouting, Are you sure that Mind Stone someone stole from another universe won't be found? At that, Thanos' expression shifted. He grabbed Captain America by the throat and demanded, The Mind Stone is in another universe? He's not lying? Captain America, gasping, still managed his wry, stubborn smile. That's right. You can't get to another universe, so give it up. You'll never be able to make that snap. Thanos was silent for a long beat. Then, with sudden cold resolve, he casually tossed Captain America aside, stepped on Iron Man, and looked around. Everyone felt the volcanic fury coiled inside him. I will find that stone, he said. Instead of striking to kill, Thanos turned and left. He clenched his fist and activated the Space Stone, whisking his fleet away from Earth. He left behind a mountain of intent, an unshakable warning. The battlefield fell silent. Captain America sagged to the ground and exhaled deeply. Tony lay beside him, his armor battered. Now do you think it's necessary to build up Earth's defenses? Tony rasped. If Thanos comes back, will we just face him together again? Captain America wheezed. If he can't find the Mind Stone, he won't come back. At that moment, a Bifrost bridge descended. Thor strode out, Stormbreaker in hand, lightning arcing around him. There was killing intent in his voice, like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Where is Thanos? For a few stunned seconds, no one answered. Tony and Captain America looked up. Thor looked where they were looking and saw only clear blue sky. Chapter 417, Chapter Thanos. Thanos. The feed cut off here. In the TVA command center, the screen froze on a frame while Tony rubbed his chin. This really isn't the Thanos I remember. But isn't everything supposed to be perfect? How could Thanos be meddling with the multiverse? Wanda muttered. There's another question, Tony said. The Mind Stone they lost, could it be the one on Jarvis's head, Leon? Leon looked up casually and nodded. It is. So you secretly went and saved another world? Tony raised an eyebrow. That's not important, I guess. Leon turned to B-15. Don't tell me Thanos is hopping between universes looking for the Mind Stone. B-15 exhaled. I wish I could say no, but unfortunately, that's exactly it. She tapped a few keys and the footage continued. Thor's frozen face on the screen vanished and the clip jumped forward. First scene, Thanos stood with his back to the room, hands clasped behind him, staring out of a ship's viewport. He ordered the Black Order, find a way to travel to other universes. The Mind Stone must be retrieved. Ebony Maw hesitated. But we've never heard of anyone who can travel between universes. Could these Earthlings be lying? Thanos didn't flinch. They're not lying. Find a way. Start with the ones who know the Traveler. Yes. The footage cut again. Second scene. The Black Order attacked Pym Technologies, kidnapped Hank Pym and his family, and stole research. Third scene. Thanos' lieutenants used Pym particles in the quantum realm to develop a method for interuniversal travel. Fourth scene. Thanos used the Space Stone to orient himself and successfully traveled to another world. That Thanos had just snapped his fingers. After a polite exchange, he generously lent our Thanos a gauntlet holding all 6 Infinity Stones. Thanos prepared to return home and snap his fingers, but then the other Thanos intervened. If someone can move between universes, Thanos too said, they could interfere with our plans across multiple worlds. We should help others until we find the one who can travel between worlds. Thanos was decisive, ruthless, and single-minded. Agreeing to such a proposal might have unpredictable consequences, but it multiplied the chances of his mission succeeding. He had no reason to refuse. The two Thanos hit it off immediately, without a shred of remorse, at the notion of eliminating half the life in multiple universes. They formed, somewhat jokingly, a multiversal Thanos mutual aid team. Their goal, make sure every Thanos in the multiverse could snap his fingers and snap them properly. They started working. First, Thanos 1 went back to his universe and snapped, wiping out half its life. Then the two of them began traveling together, helping otherworld Thanos acquire the stones and perform their snaps. Soon, snaps echoed across realities, smiles of triumph and shared pride passed among the Thanos. At first, the Time Variance Authority hadn't noticed anything wrong. After all, a Thanos snap was almost a fixed event in many universes, one of those necessary processes written into the sacred timeline. TVA employees were used to it. But then things escalated. After their snaps, the Thanos kept traveling together. 2 became 3. 3 became a dozen. They repeatedly traveled side by side, a chorus of Thanos visiting other Thanos. The experience gave them a bond, a sense of telepathy, like a happy family. To the rest of the worlds, they looked mad. To them, they were saviors of destiny. Sometimes they traveled to the early days of the Chitauri invasion to help that universe's Thanos gather the stones from scratch. Sometimes they dropped into the Ultron era, oddly impressed by Ultron and even attempting to recruit him, until they realized he was more extreme than they were and killed him without pity. The group was like a multiversal sightseeing slaughter squad, roaming timelines, watching Captain America's life, watching Iron Man's life. After watching, they would stand by as another Thanos snapped his fingers, cheering the moment with almost childlike excitement. After a successful snap, they'd approach the snapped Thanos, hug him, and say, "Well done." The footage made Leon, Tony, and Wanda stare dumbfounded. Then the tape cut to a universe where everything changed. In that world, at the exact moment Iron Man snapped his fingers and reduced Thanos' army to dust, all the visiting Thanos felt something they couldn't accept. They could accept their own failure. They could even accept it calmly. But what they couldn't accept was that after the Thanos snaps, the survivors didn't show gratitude. The survivors didn't cherish the second chance. Instead, these humans held Joker parties. Yes, Joker parties. In that hard-won world, people didn't become saints. They tried to grab Infinity Stones from other universes and wreck the systems Thanos had bled to build. The visiting Thanos were furious. They tore into the Avengers, blood painting the sky. Earth became ruins. The Thanos traveling party stopped using subtle tactics. They disbanded, returning to their own universes with a brutal decision. If the survivors wouldn't be grateful, they would destroy the universe entirely with the Infinity Stones and create a new one in which every living being knew to be thankful. The footage ended on a cold close-up, a Thanos staring into deep space, snapping his fingers, and the universe dissolving into cosmic soup. Chaos returned. When the playback finished, Tony and Wanda were silent, stunned. Leon's face had gone serious. If these are all Thanos with all 6 Infinity Stones, that's a real problem. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying, Peter blurted, trying to lighten the mood. I nearly jumped out of my skin. So many Thanos. My eyes almost turned purple just looking at the screen. Leon rubbed his forehead. You can watch a bunch of madmen chanting about destiny and still smile. You're annoyingly optimistic, Peter. Holland's Spider-Man hesitated, then gave a small, sad smile. After I joined the TVA, I snuck out to see Aunt May alive. She told me that Uncle Ben and Mr. Bref Stark, people who died, they can't smile anymore. If I lost my smile too, then their sacrifices would mean nothing. So I can't stop trying to find a way to fix things. We can't give up. Everyone in the command center looked at him. After a beat, Leon smiled faintly. Finally, a little of that middle-aged Peter Parker attitude. Am I middle-aged? I'm in my 20s, Peter protested, rubbing the back of his neck. Tony, clapping a gloved hand, added, Peter's right. We need to face the Thanos problem. So what we're dealing with isn't a single Thanos army, but an army made up of Thanos wielding all 6 Infinity Stones? Wanda asked. B-15 typed a few more lines and replied, Not necessarily. Before I explain the full situation, I need to introduce how the TVA's mechanisms work. Chapter 4 and 18, Chapter Deadpool, is fleeting. The image of Thanos snapping his fingers and erasing the universe vanished from the screen. In its place sprawled timelines that branched and forked like the limbs of a tree. The TVA can observe changes across all timelines, B-15 said. She turned to the display and pointed. Every timeline, from its birth through every branch to its end, can be seen here. These timelines keep branching, Leon said, and when a timeline is destined to be destroyed, it stops producing branches, B-15 continued. That was what happened to some universes. The Celestials' seed spun a god into being on Earth and destroyed the anchor point. I think everyone in every universe should thank you, Leon, she added suddenly. Because of you, the Celestials are moving the seeds they left on Earth to other places. That removes one reason a universe might be erased. To be honest, we tried to communicate with the Celestials before. It didn't work, until Arishem the Judge showed up. Because of you, they finally realized their mistake. You mean they actually came looking for me? Leon nodded. The Celestials tend to trust only their own logic. I couldn't agree more, B-15 said. Now, the Thanos group, what we're calling the Thanos Council, the timeline they occupy is on the same path as those that end in destruction. She pulled up a very long timeline on the screen. At many points along it, hundreds of branches spilled outward. At nodes on those branches, even more tributaries grew, like a wild, unchecked bush. She tapped several of the offshoots. Look at this stretch, from the timeline with the first traversing Thanos to the one where Iron Man snapped his fingers in the final battle. There are more than 20 timelines here that in their later segments once had other branches. B-15 paused and pursed her lips. Those branches have collapsed now because that group of Thanos chose to destroy the universe at their respective points in time. Their decisions drive the entire timeline toward destruction. Tony rubbed his chin in confusion. Wait, if Thanos decides to destroy the universe, wouldn't that create a new timeline that leads to destruction, not erase the original main timeline? B-15 shook her head. He's destroying universes with the Infinity Stones, Tony. The stones include the Time Stone. Using them to erase a universe won't spawn new timelines. It will truly and directly annihilate it. Tony frowned. Those stones really are unstoppable. Wanda, who had been pale since she saw Thanos erase a universe, asked, So those 20-plus timelines or universes are already gone. We just need to stop Thanos from destroying any more, right? No, Witch. You're mistaken. B-15 shook her head. The TVA can see the beginning and the end of every timeline, but that doesn't mean a timeline is already finished. She pointed to the temporal pad in Peter's hand. With this, the TVA can jump to any node on any timeline. But if you go into the past and kill Thanos, that just creates new branches. So what we need to do, she said, is go to the exact moment Thanos snaps and stops them there. Eliminate the problem at the snap. She folded her hands behind her back and waited for reactions. Excellent. Tony snapped his fingers. So we can clear Thanos one by one, like a game going from hell difficulty to normal. You play too many games, Tony, Leon said from the side. Also, it's not we, it's I. You can't handle Thanos. I will. B-15 hesitated a beat. We do have some reinforcements en route, Deadpool and Gold. No, absolutely not. Holland Spider clutched his chest. We agreed, B-15. No Deadpool. If you called me, you can't call him. Peter's panicked expression looked as if he expected to be tied to a rack and humiliated. B-15 looked helpless. I notified everyone at once. He's just late. He's here now. She pointed behind Peter. A temporal portal opened, and Deadpool popped his head through with the same insouciant grin. He wore his red suit and carried Deadpool dog in his arms, scrubbing the dog's back with his tongue as the dog licked his cheek. Oh, Peter, my dear Peter, how could you say such terrible things? Deadpool cooed. My heart is breaking unless you let me kiss your donut or, oh ho, stuff your spider egg into my... Before he finished, Deadpool lunged toward Peter with open arms and a ridiculous pout, arms spread like a bear. Peter screamed and reflexively shot a strand of white webbing over Deadpool's mouth, then kicked him back into the portal midair and snatched the temporal pad from Deadpool's hand. Deadpool grunted, unaware of the missing device, as he tumbled back through the portal. Peter slammed the pad and shut the portal. The command room fell silent, except for Peter's heavy breathing. He was drenched in sweat. A few seconds later, B-15 started clapping, and Leon and Tony joined in. Impressive. Too impressive, Peter. I can't imagine how much suffering you've endured from Deadpool these last 3 years, Leon said, patting his shoulder with a sympathetic smile. Peter let out a long sigh and leaned on his knees, giving a wry, exhausted smile. I think it's just as hard now. Madam B-15, boss, he said, looking up at her. Please don't call Deadpool again. I don't think any universe needs him as a savior. If they found out they were saved by Deadpool, they might prefer to die. B-15 nodded. Regardless, the main force this time is Superman. He's the captain, if he agrees. Leon met her gaze and nodded. No problem. I'll join the operation. By the way, this change with Thanos, it's partly because of me. Chapter 419, Chapter 1, Collect Infinity Gems. It has something to do with Leon too? Why? Holland Spider asked, baffled. Because of that Mind Stone, B-15 explained. Superman traveled through a parallel universe and took the Mind Stone. That action set off Thanos' unprecedented behavior. Although Thanos' own ambition and drive are the main cause, B-15 continued, Superman's actions were the fuse. That's how the multiverse works. Even the smallest change can stir up a world-ending storm. B-15 put a hand on her hip and looked at Leon. Whether in the past or in the current TVA, Superman, your actions could be considered a time crime. Then I should thank the TVA for not arresting me right away, Leon said, looking at the screen. Don't worry, I'll handle this. B-15 shook her head and smiled. The Celestial's judge said you're already a conceptual entity. We wouldn't dare arrest a conceptual entity. But Superman, I have a suggestion, she added more seriously. If you continue to influence or change events in other universes, do it as a conceptual entity and don't take anything away. Not only will you change the world's future direction and create instability, she said, but if you change too much, you risk entangling universes, ultimately causing universe collisions. Many Doctors Strange from parallel worlds interfered in other universes without authorization and repeatedly, and their meddling led to universe collisions. She pointed at Holland Spider. The TVA's job is to maintain multiversal stability, and Spider-Men have already arrested a large number of time criminal stranges. Little Spider nodded vigorously. I've already arrested 3 Stevens. Some tried to resurrect Christine, others, well, it seems they all wanted to resurrect their girlfriends. Wow, that Doctor Strange is so devoted. He's not much worse than me, Tony said shamelessly, praising himself. Forget it, Tony, Leon muttered. After he'd understood the situation, he already had a plan. Let's go. We'll start by dealing with the first Thanos. Leon took 2 time tablets from Holland Spider's hand and opened a space-time gate. Holland Spider hesitated. How are we going to handle this? Are we confronting him directly? Last time we fought Thanos, there were so many people gathered. No, Leon replied. First, we'll gather the Infinity Stones from my universe. He stepped into the gate. Only with Infinity Stones can you fight Infinity Stones. It's a pity the ones in our universe have already been destroyed by Thanos. Holland Spider followed, with Tony and Wanda behind her. B-15 watched them leave, then turned back to the large screen. After a moment of silence, she pressed a button. A surveillance video began to play, from not long ago. In the footage, TVA agents activated the Time Crusher, attempting to destroy the timelines where out-of-control Thanos variants were located. The Time Crusher was the TVA's trump card for multiversal crises. It could destroy an entire timeline by triggering a matter-antimatter collision. However, when the Time Crusher's energy was injected into the universe where Thanos resided, it was quickly nullified by an alert Thanos with a snap. That snap even alerted Thanos to the TVA's interference, and he tried to track them using the stones. If the TVA hadn't suppressed magic, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The playback ended. B-15 sighed softly. After the 6 stones converged, the Time Crusher lost its effect. This time, we can truly only rely on Superman. When everyone returned to Earth, it was still the next second after they had left. They were back at Tony's wedding. Leon casually closed the space-time gate and leaned close to the 3 who were already prepared for the ceremony. "You stay here and continue with the wedding," he said quietly. "Tony, I know saving the world is important, and your sense of responsibility matters. But for Pepper, this once-in-a-lifetime day is equally important. I'll go collect the Infinity Stones first, then come back for you." He didn't give them time to protest. With that, he vanished. "What? Impossible. You have to take me." Tony exploded, but Leon was already gone. He turned to Little Spider. "Quick, open the space-time gate. Let's go back to the TVA." Holland Spider sheepishly took off his mask. "But the tablets are with Leon. We can't go back." "Is there no backup? A spare for emergencies?" Tony demanded. "No," Little Spider's voice dropped. "I only had one, and Leon took Deadpool's too." "Fuck," Tony swore. "Why are you cursing, Tony?" A voice from across the lawn interrupted. "Hey, is that Peter? You came to the wedding too. That's wonderful." Pepper walked over. Tony froze, then forced a grin and put his arm around Peter's shoulder. "That's right, Pepper. Peter came to the wedding. He admires me a lot." Peter laughed awkwardly and nodded. Wanda, standing nearby, smiled at Pepper, but her eyes betrayed worry. On the other side of the cosmos, Leon materialized outside Earth. First, the Reality Stone. 5 colors shimmered in his palm: blue, red, yellow, green, and purple. In What If, the Gamora universe's Stone Crusher couldn't destroy the Infinity Ultron universe's stones, he mused. That means there are differences between Infinity Stones from different parallel worlds. To maximize their power, it's best to gather all 6 from the same universe. Right now, only the Reality and Soul Stones are uncollected. The Reality Stone was sealed in a dimensional space on Earth by Asgard's former God King. If I want to retrieve it... Leon's palm swept across the void like an eraser wiping chalk. Space thinned, and guided by the stone's energy, he locked onto a spot within a dimensional rift. He formed several hand seals. The sealed, rune-inscribed stone within the dimension began to crumble away. The ether within the seal poured out like water, a dense, scarlet mist. As the ether rushed forward, it violently lashed out, trying to enter Leon's body through his mouth, nose, and skin. He merely waved his hand. The raging ether immediately calmed, like a jackal curbing itself before a lion. Leon opened his palm and, with a thought, gathered the flowing ether. It condensed into a scarlet reality stone that floated into his hand. "Reality stone in hand," he said. Leon absorbed the reality stone into his inner world, and the 5-colored energy in his palm winked out. Next, the soul stone. Time to find Thanos. But before he located Thanos, Leon turned his gaze to Earth, cut a line through space with his finger, and 2 figures tumbled out. Invisible spatial forces bound them, pinning them next to Leon. They wore waterproof overalls covered in mud and grass clippings. Through the spatial rift, Leon could see Kamartaj's small world. The 2 had been cleaning up the droppings of a giant dragon, standing before piles of dung with iron forks. They were Gamora and Nebula, Thanos' adopted daughters. A year ago, After the ill-fated Super Skrull defeated Thanos, he had, without authorization, tied the two up and handed them to Leon. When Gaia, the Skrull leader, kneeling theatrically, piled them in front of Leon and spoke nonsense about hot weapons, Leon had nearly used the Time Stone to reverse time. Kara, sitting beside him then, had given him a look that made him refuse to look like a pervert. To save face, he told Gaia to throw the pair to Tony, who, under Pepper's watchful eye, passed them on to Wong. Wong assigned them to perform the daily grunt work in the small world, chiefly cleaning and collecting materials from magical creatures. The worst job was hauling giant dragon dung. Those dragons ate and excreted in prodigious quantities. For a year, Gamora and Nebula had been endlessly shoveling. They had tried to resist, even attempting to escape, but after being thrashed a few times by the passing Hulk, they'd become compliant. Now the two were trapped by invisible space. Nebula, being part machine, was fine. Gamora, however, could hardly breathe in the void. Her body began to freeze and swell, death creeping close. She couldn't even think about agreeing to Leon's terms. "Gamora," Nebula cried, struggling to reach her sister but unable to move. Leon waved his hand, and the temperature in the trapping space gradually rose. Air appeared. Gamora gasped greedily, leaning against the invisible wall, her eyes blazing with fear and fury. "What do you want us to do?" "Help me obtain the Soul Stone," Leon said as he drew a circle in the air. "Impossible. The Soul Stone's whereabouts are unknown throughout the universe. We have no clue where to even start. You might as well throw us back into that pile of feces," Gamora snapped. "Throw you back?" Leon said, surprised. "Are you addicted to cleaning dung? Or are you happy with a peaceful life, even if it's dirty and miserable?" The portal he was casting linked to Thanos' location. He stepped through, and Gamora and Nebula floated alongside him. "But I'm sorry. No matter how much you love giant dragon dung, I still need your help to get the Soul Stone." They appeared in the main control room of a battleship. Not far from them, a tall figure sat in the main seat. Leon looked at him and spoke softly. "Of course, you can refuse, but I won't accept your refusal, because you're prisoners." Chapter 420, Leon, the Order of Sacrifice is reversed. The place was the command room of a flagship in Thanos' Legion. Though called a command room, it felt more like the lair a 1,000-year-old demon would hoard in a horror tale. Jagged stone walls were fitted with strips of dim light that in the gloom looked like smeared lava. Murky, shallow water lapped around a tombstone-like throne worn smooth by centuries. Thanos sat on it like a sovereign, hands on the armrests, eyes closed, radiating a natural, oppressive authority. "Humph." When Gamora saw him, she made a small, instinctive sound, half gasp, half sob, then stifled it. Her eyes went to Leon, wide and frantic, as if begging him to retreat. Nebula on the other side was no better. The tension that creased her usually indifferent face was unmistakable. Leon took in their reactions with a faint smile and spoke loudly toward the throne. "Thanos, it's been a year since your two adopted daughters saw you, and neither of them seems happy to be reunited. As a foster father, you're even worse than Odin." He snapped his fingers and released the spatial hold that had restrained Gamora and Nebula. They dropped to the floor with a thud, faces saying, "What the hell?" They couldn't believe Leon hadn't fled, and that he dared taunt Thanos. On the throne, Thanos slowly opened his eyes, his murderous gaze locked on Leon. "Who are you?" he demanded. Then he noticed his daughters on the floor and shot upright, sudden agitation cracking his voice. "Gamora, how are you here?" He had been tracking the scroll for a year. He had been separated from his daughter for a year. He was understandably agitated, but Thanos' calm returned quickly as he studied the scene. His stare sharpened on Leon. "Did you save them? Or are you a Skrull?" Thanos rose from the throne and descended. His height and bearing filled the room, an invisible pressure making one want to shrink away. Leon didn't flinch. He didn't answer the question. Instead, he nodded toward Nebula, who stood quietly with a glazed expression. "You have two daughters, yet you only show concern for Gamora. Favoritism is one thing, but being this blatant won't do any favors for family harmony, Thanos." "They are both my daughters," Thanos said coldly. "If you rescued them, you shall be rewarded equally, both of them. But if you are a Skrull, or if you stand with them." Thanos' words trailed into a threat as he drew the double-edged warblade that rested beside his throne. He had clearly made his decision. The blade in his hand tightened the room like a violin string. Gamora suddenly relaxed into a sneer. Everything had happened too quickly before. Now she remembered more. The man who had brought them here was someone even the terrifying Skrull knelt to and called Master. If this stranger clashed with Thanos and both were harmed, that could only be good for her. But the situation didn't play out as she'd hoped. Thanos advanced with grim intent, and Leon, unfazed, opened another mystic portal. On the other side lay a salt and sand landscape. Leon stepped through. "Follow me." The three in the command room froze. The tone was so assured it could have belonged to a commander taking his recruits out for a stroll. Gamora and Nebula exchanged a wary glance, hesitated, then followed. Thanos stood a moment before the portal, his face a storm of suspicion and restraint. "Who exactly are you?" he asked, voice low and grinding. "Who I am isn't important," Leon said, amusement in his eyes as he regarded Thanos. This version of Thanos was clearly haunted by the Super Skrull's bait and ambush tactics. Any other universe's Thanos, brimming with certainty, would have walked through the portal regardless, confident he could dominate whatever lay beyond. But this Thanos had been tricked too many times. He feared stepping through that golden door and being hacked apart by 100 Skrull leaping out like a trap. What matters is this. This is Vormir, the location of the Soul Stone, and your last chance, Leon added, then walked deeper across the salt flats, beckoning. Thanos didn't move at first. Gamora and Nebula did. Despite being part of Thanos' faction in name, both wore smiles that were hard to hide now that he was in a corner. Thanos watched them go, expression dark, flickering between anger and calculation, then stepped through the portal alone. He brought no forces. There was no point. Against the Super Skrull, fleets of ordinary ships were useless, and the Black Order were already dead. He had no one left to trust with this. The portal closed behind him. Thanos gripped his warblade, braced for an ambush. But Vormir was only a barren salt flat, no enemies slammed out of hiding. Frowning, Thanos followed the three figures from a distance. Minutes later, a figure floating in the air, draped in a billowing black robe, blocked their path. He was the ghost that guided visitors to the Soul Stone. "Welcome," he intoned, naming each arrival one by one. "Thanos, son of Alars, Gamora and Nebula, daughters of Thanos." He looked at Leon with a flicker of curiosity. "And you like the son of Stark, wrapped in mist." Leon studied the robed man. "If you mean foster father, then yes, Stark. Red Skull, take us to the altar. Your mission ends today." "You know me." The figure was startled, then recovered. "Red Skull was my former name. Now I am only a solitary soul exiled by the Space Stone." He landed and turned toward the mountain behind him. "You seek the Soul Stone, so you must be prepared to sacrifice. Follow me." They climbed a rugged, broken path and stopped at a cliff that fell into a bottomless abyss. On a ledge below sat the altar. "The Soul Stone is different from the others," Red Skull said, eyes fixed on the altar. "To obtain it, the rule is a soul for a soul. You must sacrifice the life of someone you truly love to make the stone appear." A smirk split Gamora's face. "The soul of someone you truly love? Then we came here for nothing." She folded her arms and turned to Leon. "No one here has ever loved anyone. Everyone calls you Superman, right? You brought us here for nothing." "For nothing? I don't think so," Leon said calmly, looking directly at Thanos. Thanos had already understood what he would have to give. He stared down at the altar, then looked up with a tear streaking his cheek. Gamora and Nebula were stunned. "He's crying because he can't get the Soul Stone?" Gamora scoffed, stepping back. "That's ridiculous. Someone like you." "No," Leon interrupted. "He's crying because he loves you too much, and he has no choice but to sacrifice you." "That's impossible." Gamora tried to deny it, but when she met Thanos' eyes, she saw the truth, the reluctant, painful love in them. Her pupils dilated, panic broke her voice. She turned and bolted. "I won't die for a rock. I won't die for him." But Thanos seized her arm easily. Gamora couldn't pull free, not an inch. He looked at Leon, eyes blazing with a mix of tenderness and lethal intent. "If your goal is to steal the Soul Stone, you'll get nothing," he declared, voice cold as steel. "I will take back everything that belongs to me." He knew Leon's intentions, yet he had no choice. Intelligence said the Skrull already held 2 stones. The others were either in the hands of powerful beings or unaccounted for. His only hope was the Soul Stone. With heartbreak blazing in his eyes, he resolved to throw Gamora over the cliff. He flung her. At that moment, a hand closed on Thanos' wrist and held both him and the despairing Gamora at the cliff's edge. The hand was slender and surprisingly smooth for a warrior, but its grip was iron. No matter how Thanos struggled, he could not break free, and Gamora hung suspended. "What are you doing?" Thanos demanded, face a mask of fury. "What else do you want to do?" "My apologies," Leon said, holding Thanos' wrist. "You've got the order wrong. I need to correct it." He threw a punch. One clean blow to Thanos' face sent the Titan crashing unconscious to the ground. Gamora fell as well. For a heartbeat, they all stood there. Gamora, still stunned by the near death and the revelation, and Nebula, distraught over everything she'd discovered about their father, staring at Leon in blank disbelief. "Don't look at me like that, Leon said. "It's your turn now. If you don't want to spend the rest of your life cleaning dragon dung, throw Thanos off the cliff." That had been his plan all along. Bind Thanos, bring him here, and let Gamora and Nebula be the ones to cast him down as the sacrifice. He hadn't expected Thanos to follow them into Vormir, like a porcupine foolishly charging under a tiger's belly in the forest. Gamora and Nebula looked at one another, incredulous. They pointed at themselves as if to say, "Me? Sacrifice him? Are you insane? Do you think we love him? He's a butcher, a madman, a demon with blood on his hands." Gamora burst out, hysterical. Crying and shouting in turn, she raged against the idea, trying to prove to Leon or to herself that she did not love Thanos. Nebula was quieter but equally adamant, shaking her head. "Impossible. The one I hate most is Gamora, and after her, Father, Thanos." She tapped her temple with a grim, bitter laugh. "Every time I lost to Gamora in training, he'd replace parts of me with machinery. I'm not a human, not a weapon," she said, voice breaking. "I've been turned into a monstrous hybrid. How could you possibly think I would love him?"